make sure that everyone's aware that, as in the past, we are broadcasting this meeting via the internet. So at any point, any of us, including some of you in the audience, could be visible to anyone watching via the internet. People with more time on their hands than most, perhaps. But as a reminder, please silence your cell phones just like you do in the movie theater. A couple of announcements. I would like to invite all of you to hold the dates of November 8th and 9th for our annual Texas Higher Education Leadership Conference. The conference is going to be held in Austin this year at the Radisson Hotel and Suites at 111 Cesar Chavez. And as in the past, the conference is designed to bring together regents and trustees, chancellors, presidents, and other interested public higher education leaders to gather information and discuss issues of shared interest. The governing board orientation sessions are scheduled to begin at about 1 o'clock on November 8th. These sessions will satisfy the training requirement for newly appointed regents. But trustees of community colleges are also welcome and very much encouraged to attend the training session and the full conference. In conjunction with this conference, the coordinating board will present the 4th annual State of Higher Education Luncheon and 10th annual Higher Education Star Award ceremony. That luncheon will be held at the Radisson on Tuesday, November 9th from noon to 2 o'clock. And the luncheon will feature a keynote address from our Commissioner, Raymond Paredes, as well as a presentation of the 2010 Texas Higher Education Star Award finalists. That's where we'll announce the winners. So we look forward to seeing each of you there. On Wednesday of this week, Achieving the Dream announced that 7 community colleges have emerged as leaders in the national student completion movement. Leader colleges are institutions that have demonstrated commitment and progress on 4 principles: leadership, improved programs and services, broad engagement, and systemic institutional improvement. Of the 7 colleges named, 2 are from Texas, and we're very proud of these: Alamo Community College and Brazosport College. This is the second year Achieving the Dream has named leader colleges. Nationally, 28 colleges so far have been recognized as leader colleges, 7 from Texas during this program. We want to recognize and applaud Alamo Community College and Brazosport College for their achievement. I'm going to take one item out of order on our agenda. As most of you know, Brenda Pavich accepted an appointment to the Board of Trustees at the University of Texas at Austin. Yesterday I told her that even though she was taking a step down, I wanted to honor her by wearing an orange tie. I got to send her off in style yesterday evening at dinner. But her appointment has left the position of Secretary to the Board open. Texas Education Code Section 61.023 requires the Board to appoint the Secretary of the Board. And I would like to nominate for that position as Secretary to the Board, Joe Hinton. Do I hear a motion to approve Joe Hinton?
Second.
We have a motion from Dr. Golden and a second from Vice Chairman Mendoza. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Joe, you're stuck with another job. Congratulations.
Well, I need more work.
Also at this time, I would like to formally introduce our new student board member, Eric Roan. I'm pleased to introduce Eric. He is a student at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, the Fighting Islanders, and he is our first undergraduate student board member. He was appointed by Governor Perry on June 1st, 2010 to serve for a 1-year term. He will serve on all 3 of our committees: strategic planning and policy, closing the gaps, and agency operations. That was your request, right? Okay, just checking. Eric will receive his bachelor's degree in finance from A&M Corpus Christi this coming May, assuming we don't take too much of his time up. And Eric is a member of the Texas A&M Corpus Christi Student Accounting Society, Aloha Days Freshman Camp staff, the Campus Activities Board, past president and chief justice of the Student Government Association, and a past student ambassador for the high school summer bridge programs. He's also vice president of recruitment for the A&M Corpus Christi Interfraternity Council and a past freshman mentor for the Tide Advocate Program. And I could go on because there's still more stuff listed here. But instead, I think, Eric, I'll turn the mic to you and ask if you'd like to make some comments at this time.
Once again, I want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate the welcome y'all have given me and just helped me kind of get oriented with the board. I really look forward to working with all of you. And look forward to see how this year turns out. So thank you once again for the welcome.
Well, Eric, we're glad to have you, and we're ready to put you to work.
Sir.
Thanks for joining us. Next item of business is one that I guess I have mixed emotions about. That's to honor our immediate past chairman, Whit Ryder, who, as most of you know, has stepped down from the chairmanship but remains an active member of our board and is not going to have the option to take a furlough of any sort. And so this morning we're going to honor Whit through the form of a resolution, which we traditionally do for our officers and board members who may be leaving us. But I want to just say that personally it's been an honor and a privilege to serve as Whit's vice chairman. And Paul encourages us in Scripture just to be quick to listen and slow to speak. That's something I tend to struggle with. But Whit really is the characterization of that kind of leadership. He's very quick to listen to all points of view and then builds consensus using a lot of patient wisdom. He's been so key to the long-range strategic planning that will set the goals and objectives and the strategies for Texas, not just in closing the gaps, but beyond closing the gaps to 2030. So, my friend, you've left big shoes to fill, and you're going to have a lasting impact on the state. So, without further ado, I want to read this recognition into the record. Whereas A.W. Whit Ryder III was appointed chair of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board by Governor Rick Perry in November 2008, and whereas during his tenure as chair, Mr. Ryder served with integrity and dedication with a genuine commitment to increasing student success and higher education excellence. And whereas Mr. Ryder's contributions to the board are marked especially by his consensus-building decisions and keen understanding of issues across an unusually wide range of board responsibilities, including guiding the board and its staff towards successful completion of closing the gaps by 2015, inspiring a shared vision, and building future leadership on the board. And whereas Mr. Ryder has been a tireless advocate for a number of critical higher education issues, such as increasing funding for student financial aid, reforming the Texas Grant Program to reward financially needy students who prepare academically to succeed in college, creating a college-going culture in every school in Texas, and aligning the funding formulas of higher education institutions with state goals in order to increase student success. And one more whereas Mr. Ryder provided particularly effective leadership during the coordinating board's strategic planning process, which resulted in the short-term accelerated plan for closing the gaps by 2015 and the long-term vision for national and international excellence in Texas higher education. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board on this 29th day of July 2010 express our deepest appreciation to A.W. Whit Ryder for his distinguished service as chair of this board and his unwavering dedication to higher education for all the people of Texas. And be it further resolved that the resolution be included in the minutes and that a copy of the resolution signed by the members of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board be presented to Mr. Ryder in recognition of the respect, admiration, and high esteem in which he is held. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I'll say this is my last time to chance the mic, except I have to serve as an interim chair of agency ops today. But I just want to thank really several people. It's been a real joy for me to serve on this board for 6 years. And as Fred said, the governor was kind enough to let me stay on the board for another year, and they can put up with me until August of next year. But just a few people I'd really like to recognize. First of all, as the institutions, I will tell you that I have learned so much more from the institutions than probably I've given back in 6 years of institutions. And I knew very little about higher education other than I was a product of higher education when I joined the board 6 years ago. But I have never seen the passion, the commitment. And I've had the privilege and honor of crossing over 3 boards now. And to see the progress that's been made by the institution, so often we're talking about we need more success. You know, when I look back to where we were at the state 6 years ago and the progress we've made in these goals, that's attributed to the institutions. And the thing I'm looking forward to is all those relationships where I can still pick up the phone and call good people like Jesse or my good friend Bernie, who I've had a great opportunity to work with. So the second group is really the board members, and really my comments here are directed, one, to the board members sitting around this table, but also going back to people like Jerry Farrington, Bob Shepard, Neil Adams, Lorraine Perryman. Great group of people. They left a legacy here, and this group will also leave a legacy here. There's not a doubt in my mind. And somebody asked me the other day, they said, what do you remember most and about your experience on the board? And really, there's many things, but one of the key things is really those relationships. I would have never developed these relationships without having been a part of this. And it's relationships with the board members as well as the legislators. So I'll forever be grateful for that. And then last but not least, and I think we always say that, it's the leadership team and the staff here at this agency. You know, I've heard, when I first came in, I'd heard numerous rumors about serving on a state agency board and what it would be like being a private sector guy coming into a state agency and what might be frustrations and dealing with it. But I can tell you, I have never dealt with such a professional group in my life. And more importantly, even though many times it may seem like they're butting heads with the institutions, they are absolutely your biggest advocates. And they have a passion for what they do. They love higher education. And, you know, I always felt like the Verizon guy when I'd go in and testify, because I knew that if I got asked an answer to a question I didn't know, which was probably 90% of the time, I had about 10 people behind me. Somebody was going to have the answer. And that's attributable to all the hard work. And I just wanted to the staff, I want to say thank you. I've somewhat missed being here every week, but it's you get your life back a little bit. But it's been a great opportunity. I appreciate it. And last but not least, even though the governor's not here, I know representatives from the governor's office is here, and I've told him this personally as he gave me the opportunity 6 years ago, and then gave me the opportunity 3 years ago to be in leadership, and so I'm deeply indebted to him. So thank you for all you do. I'm looking forward to the last year of serving here, and as I told Fred, I'm definitely moving to the back row. I'll be sitting over there to the right of Dennis next meeting and not up here. So thank you for just the privilege and honor of having the opportunity to work with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Today, the honor and the resolution. October, the roast and the making fun. All right. Before we move on with the next agenda item, I want to recognize Louise Appleton, trustee with the Tarrant County Community College District. Louise, welcome. Glad to have you here. And also our friend and a fellow member of the Advisory Committee on Cost Efficiencies, Roberto Zarate, trustee of the previously honored Alamo Community College District, is here today. Roberto, where are you? Are there any other trustees or regents in the audience with us this morning that are willing to admit it and stand up and be recognized? Do we have any of our new institutional presidents or chancellors with us here this morning? I had a note that there were none of the new leadership with us, but I want to be sure. All right. Then we will move on with our agenda. The second agenda item is for approval of the minutes from the April board meeting. Do I have a motion for the approval of the April board meeting minutes? So moved. We have a motion from Dr. Golden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Whit Ryder and/or Durga. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Our next item is the consent calendar for the entire meeting. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we think can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to save some time for other items that need more attention. I want to point out that the practice of putting most of the items on here involving the rules, both proposals and adoptions, that are on the consent calendar. You'll notice, however, that a few of the rules are still on our regular agenda. Those are the ones that the staff thinks we might want or need to discuss or did not have a completed comment period. Of course, any board member can request an agenda item be removed from the consent calendar, and that'll give us an opportunity to discuss it fully later on. Are there any consent items that any board member wishes to pull from the consent calendar at this time? Are there any items that a board member wants to add to the consent calendar? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Have a motion from Mr. Hinton. Is there a second? Second from Vice Chairman Mendoza. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now we will begin agenda item 4. This item is our major policy discussion. We'd like to ask our 4 panelists to go ahead and come up to the front table and the microphones. Today's consideration will be on the preliminary recommendations to the board and the draft report by our advisory committee on the governor's executive order regarding cost efficiency in higher education. Our 4 panel speakers are Jesse Rogers, Bernie Francis, Richard Rhodes, and Ray Messer. And let me just briefly introduce each of these gentlemen. And I'm hoping that you gentlemen remember your batting order because my notes up here don't have it. But let me start with Bernie. He is Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of BCS. He is a graduate of the University of Texas at Dallas and also attended Dartmouth University's Minority Business Executive Program. He is a veteran of the United States Air Force. In addition to being CEO of Business Control Systems, he is also CEO of First Class Caregivers, former chairman of the Texas State University System Board of Regents, and also past chair of the Texas State Technical College, and chair of the Education Committee for the Governor's Business Council. So, Bernie, welcome. Incidentally, our advisory committee, which consisted of 20 members, chose 10 leaders from academic positions, or rather leadership positions in all categories of higher education, and the other 10 came from leadership positions in the private business world, almost all of whom had some leadership involvement in higher education. So it was a really great makeup of the advisory committee. Next, I'd like to introduce Raymond F. Messer. Ray is president and chairman of the board of Walter P. Moore, the large engineering firm headquartered in Houston. He joined Walter P. Moore in 1981 and became president in 1993. During his tenure, Walter P. Moore has grown from 4 offices at the time he became president to 13 offices across the country with over 400 professionals. Ray also chairs the board of trustees of his alma mater, Carroll College in Helena, Montana. Is a board member of the American Council of Engineering Companies. Serves on the Texas A&M University Civil Engineering Advisory Council, and is a past president of the Texas Council of Engineering Companies. Ray, welcome, and thank you for participating. Richard Rhodes, our third panelist, is president of El Paso Community College. He took that position December 1st, 2001. Prior to that, he was vice president of business services at Salt Lake Community College in Salt Lake City, Utah. And from 83 to 94, he was vice president of financial and administrative services and interim president at El Paso Community College. Richard is a native of New Mexico, but got to Texas as soon as he could. Received his BBA in accounting and his MA in educational management from New Mexico State University, and a PhD in community college leadership from the University of Texas at Austin. He's also chair-elect of the Texas Association of Community Colleges. Richard, we welcome you and appreciate your service. And last but not least, Jesse Rogers. president of Midwestern State University. I think he's held that position for his entire adult life. But he's served Midwestern State for 40 years, which is an amazing accomplishment. As a professor of physics and chemistry, as well as head of the Department of Chemistry and other leadership positions, culminating in his tenure as president. He's a commissioner for the state of Texas to the Commission on Colleges of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. He holds a PhD from Texas Christian University and earned his BS degree from the University of Texas at Arlington. Dr. Rogers, thank you for your participation. Following those introductions, I want to turn it over to the panel. And Dr. Rogers, we're going to lead off with you.
Thank you. First, let me add my word of thanks to Whit and congratulations for your service to the state of Texas and to higher education, and I particularly appreciate your comments about higher education. And again, thank you, and we look forward to your continued service on this board, and I've enjoyed working with you very much over the last years. Fred, I want to tell you that I wrote my comments down initially on Monday, but every time I'd get a message from you in the intervening time, I'd just simply tear a page out of my testimony. So I hope there's something here that we've covered here.
Well, you could blame your fellow panelists. They kept asking questions.
What I did, I also found out last night when I tried out a few of the remarks I'm going to make today before my presidential colleagues on the Council of Presidents and Chancellors, that not everyone agrees with me. And so I've modified and softened my remarks to some extent, because I know some of them are sitting behind me. I really think that what this demonstrates, that it is difficult to write new policies and procedures and recommendations that fits all. What is good for Midwestern State University and what we should do to meet the challenges that we have to, and what's good for the University of Texas and Texas A&M are not necessarily the same things, and I think we all agree with that. Although there are some overarching ideas I think that we must seriously consider. Let me begin by thanking the coordinating board for giving me the opportunity to serve on this committee, which was charged with developing plans for cost containment in higher education. And as you can tell from the draft report that's before you, the committee prefers to title our work as cost efficiency planning, and I don't believe that any one of the members of the committee, and I found this after initially we came here believing that there is only one solution to the challenges of providing affordable, quality higher education for the citizens of the state of Texas, and I believe this draft report before you certainly does demonstrate this. And I think as the report is developed and refined, there's going to be some additions and deletions from suggestions in there, but I do believe that we're off to a good start for some long-range planning. As you read my resume, I have to say that I look at it as that I have been extremely fortunate in my lifetime to experience the best of public and private education that this state has to offer. And I'm more proud of the thing that I am most proud of is the fact that I have been a classroom teacher for well over 35 years. And I hope that fact does give me a little wisdom and some credibility that I've been there, and I've dealt with young people and college students, yes, for all of my professional life anyway. I did not come to the meetings of the committee thinking that we'd be looking for short-term cost-cutting measures, and I was pleased to find out that the entire committee realized this, and that we were here looking for plans to give our future college students a quality education more efficiently and more effectively for a very long term. We have experienced in the last few years and on numerous occasions during my long tenure as a university administrator, belt-tightening periods in response to economic downturns. Currently on my campus, we work diligently to cut the cost of our utilities through working on deferred maintenance and other issues that will help us in the long term. This is true along with fact that we know that many other universities have initiated hiring and salary freezes, and unfortunately in some cases some cutbacks on staffing. I have in fact on my desk at school a page of examples of cost-cutting measures that will assist universities in the short term as we all weather what I believe, and I don't mean to be negative, I'm normally a very positive person, but I believe that we're facing a long-term financial downturn in this state and certainly in our nation. I believe that we should give our university administrators and faculty credit for responding to our current financial situation in ways that suit their institutional culture and their regional needs and interests, as well as the needs of their students. I know that you all have before you the draft report of the Cost Efficiency Committee, and I'm not going to read it to you. In fact, I'll tell you, I don't even agree with everything that's in there, and I see that some of my best ideas are missing.
We've got an appendix to cover.
But I will tell you, I do believe this. I was very pleased with the way the report was pulled together. As you know, it's a very diverse group that did this planning, and we had a lot of ideas that we threw out there, but the way the report was pulled together, I do think that it does form a sound foundation for long-term and strategic planning that we need to continue this process. So what I'm going to try to do today in a few minutes is distill just a part of these recommendations. I'm going to even restate and reframe some part of it in a manner that I understand that will give more background, I believe, to my thinking about some of the specific recommendations in there. And I hope that there will be some questions that will come out of my comments. Let me specifically begin by setting the stage for our future planning and summarize some comments that are made within the report. I specifically ask, as you've asked me, to look at 8 and 9. There's great specificity in that part of the report, and certainly we all made a contribution to that. And I want to talk really more about my thinking behind those specific recommendations than I do the recommendations themselves. But I, along with the rest of the panel, will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. In the most general way, it is my belief that among others, that we must recognize, and I think we do, this goes almost without saying, we need to not revitalize our state and nation's economy. We must restructure it in many ways. Our nation, for years now, has lived off of its brain power. We need a workforce of imaginative, creative, and critical thinking people, and we must find ways to get many more of our potential college students through secondary education into college and out with a certificate, an associate degree, a baccalaureate degree, and we must do this with great efficiency. And I think some of the recommendations on 8 and 9 directly relate to that overarching issue that we recognize today. Let me give you examples of what's behind my thinking in this. Our dropout rates from high school, our college going rates, and our college completion rates range from poor to basically awful. I believe that through our nation's great wealth, we've created a system of higher education that's probably the best in the world, and I'll tell you that in my lower moments, it appears to me that our very own population is not taking advantage of this great system and great opportunities that await them. I think the numbers certainly bear this out. I do believe, however, that we have built a system of higher education in this nation and in Texas that we can no longer afford to fund as it has been exactly in the past. We often hear the comment that we must do more with less. I prefer and recommend that we recognize that what we can mean by this statement is that we should get more and better results for the dollars that we are spending and we will spend in the future. Let me now make some very general statements about the cost of higher education and some possible alterations that might bring about efficiencies and success of our students that we desire. There are, in fact, and I recognize this, and I'm saying this from my colleagues, and it certainly comes from my discussion last night, many students who must work long hours, take few hours of college to complete a degree. because of family situations and other situations, that is the truth. And the number of students like that varies university by university, and that's the reason for my initial comments about making very broad statements about all universities. However, I will say that it is unacceptable for so many of our traditional age and traditional college students to take 6 years or longer to get a bachelor's degree. We need policies at the university level to encourage and even push students through a baccalaureate degree within 4 years. I believe that the current college-going culture of a little work, a little socializing, and a little college is contributing to the dropout rate and certainly the long graduation times. The college-going culture must change, and we must do things to help it change. I don't know how we've gotten in the situation that we have. And I am not prepared to recommend overarching or exact policies, but I'll tell you that I am prepared to go back to Midwestern State University and make some policy changes and university changes that will make it clear to our traditional student body that it is our intent that they take more hours, complete more hours, and benefit from the known importance of graduating in 4 years, if at all possible. I think this is one of the greatest challenges we face. As I look at the data at our university and the data of this state and nation, we have too few students, first of all, going to college. We have too few not finishing, and we have students taking far too long to get an associate or a baccalaureate degree. The longer they're in school and the longer they're taking, the greater the chance that they are going to drop out and never finish. Let me insert here and tell you that Midwestern State has offered for many years what I call an adult completion program. We do this over the internet, and what we find out is there's an enormous student audience here in Texas of people who have 60 or 70 college hours, have gone to 3 or 4 or 5 colleges and universities, who have families, who cannot be on a college campus at a specific time, but have the opportunity to be promoted or need new information and knowledge. And it is an example of what has happened to us in the past, and the fact that these people had not finished school. So we must go back and actually redo what we've missed in the past with these students. We graduate about 300 non-traditional adult working students every year in that program. It has found, finally, great acceptance among our faculty, I believe, at the university, and its importance. Now, the next comments that I make, I certainly don't, I can't say enough to keep everyone from misunderstanding them, and I say them, I think, at great risk. But I will say that, in my opinion, financial aid in Texas and our nation is, in fact, and in my opinion, again, quite good. With some changes, it can be made more effective. And I personally am really tired of hearing that all universities are too expensive for students to gain at least a baccalaureate level education. At Midwestern State University, I frequently tell parents when I meet with them on our college recruiting days that students can get a degree in mechanical engineering or applied piano in 4 years for the cost of a mid-priced automobile. And that automobile will be gone in about 4 or 5 years, but that education is good for a lifetime. And I do believe that with sound advising and the absence of any other kind of financial aid, which is very unusual in most universities, that there would be none at all, I have no problem recommending the borrowing of some money to get a high-quality education if necessary. Cost of college is not the defining issue that it is made out to be and that I read about all the time. Many schools, now my university did not invent this. We took it from the ideas of many other universities. But we have a program called the Mustang Promise. And simply what it is, it will guarantee a student who's ready to work and prepared to do college level work, if they come from a family that has an adjusted gross income of $50,000 per year, we will assure them that they will pay no tuition or fees, lab fees. Now, we can't guarantee them room and board and blue jeans and gasoline, but we can guarantee that's going to go on whether you go to college or not, but we can guarantee them that they can get through the university. So we're very proud of that program. There are many other Texas universities that started that program before we did, and it just shows how committed we are to getting students through a university. In summary, let me state the following, and I'm getting on some of the other panelist ideas, but I really want to wrap this up and say that we must deal with, in my opinion, some broad categories, and I list them as follows. We must deal with and improve and make more effective, well-placed financial aid. That is critical, and there's a lot of quantitative data that demonstrates that. I'll interject that as we do studies on our campus, those students who graduate in near the top of their class and who receive Texas grants have the highest graduation rate in our university. And I think that does tell us something. It keeps them from having to work and lets them take a full college load and become a full-time college student, and certainly enhances their chances of graduating. We must adopt and deal with policies that will encourage traditional age college students through a 4-year educational program and consequently improve our graduation numbers. This will, I hope, change the college-going culture that I have mentioned previously. And I think we need to put a lot of efforts into how we got into this 12 hours a semester. And I will say this, even having to lower the college graduation or majors number to 120 hours. It seems like we're backing down to meet the students rather than saying you can take more hours than that if you want to learn more, but you want to get out of here in 4 years and get that baccalaureate degree. We must stubbornly stay with our plans concerning the new college readiness standards, the end-of-course examination, and high school requirements for attendance at our public institutions. I have been pleased to read the college readiness standards. They are very rigorous, and I understand that it's going to be some time before we prepare enough secondary teachers to teach at that level, but I think we need to stick by these plans. I think there will be a lot of pressure to back away from them when we see initially how students are going to perform on this, but this is our chance to make a quantum leap in quality of our high school graduates, which are going to result in more college graduates. Let me end by saying that something about funding mechanisms. As you all know, I've served on that committee for longer than I probably should have. My mind's made up, so I need to probably go and let somebody else work on this. But we simply need to continue with the incentives that are in place at this point. I do believe incentives. I think they need to continue. They don't need to be one-time appropriations to universities. We need continuing, dependable, basic funding to operate universities. And I personally like the incentive that's being developed of rewarding and funding institutions based on the number of graduates that we do produce. After all, what are we there for other than to produce graduates? I also think we need to quit messing around with the formula so much and recognize that they do have some fundamental flaws, but the fact we change them so much means that we don't have a dependable, predictable funding for universities, and that's what we ask for more than anything else. I got off the topic there, I'm sorry, a little bit. I just had to throw that in. I asked everyone that they please read the report with these points in mind. And again, I will tell you, I think it is a great start for continuing quality improvement, and I hope this process will continue, and maybe we'll have a standing committee to continue planning. Thank you, Mike.
Jesse, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate your comments. I should have prefaced the panelists by saying that the report, which is only a little over 10 pages long, took from 30 different, very broad categories of ideas that our advisory committee members came up with and discussed. Our meetings not only involved hearing experts from all over the country, but also involved small group work sessions in the afternoon at every meeting. So there was a lot of idea and strategy development, so to speak. But the report culminates in what we call 5 big ideas or categories of recommendations. And the one that Dr. Rogers discussed, but what didn't limit himself to, which is okay, was making productivity and continuous improvement a cultural change in higher education, and that talked about both academic and administrative productivity. So, Dr. Rogers, I appreciate your words and your testimony, and I'd like everyone to hold, jot your questions down, but hold them until each of the panelists have had a chance to say their piece. Next is Bernie Francis, whom we've asked to address another of the 5 big ideas, which is meeting demand with new approaches to delivery. So, Bernie?
Thank you very much. I assume my mic is working. I want to start by thanking Whit for his great service and all the help that you've given me over the years. I really, really appreciate it. And want to welcome Eric to the board, to the real world of allocating limited resources. So welcome aboard. While standing in the scanner line there at Love Field this morning, I was reminded of your wisdom for involving business in this process when I looked over and saw that one of 2 scanners had a sign on it that said, "Crew members only." And so in the world of business, we call that underutilized assets. So I thought I'd open with that. I am Bernardo Francisco, a.k.a. Bernie Francis, and I'm a long in the tooth business owner, 25 plus years of business control systems. We do IT and engineering project staffing. I'm also the recent past chair of the Board of Regents for the Texas State University System and distant past chair of the Board of Regents for the Texas State Technical College. And I've served on several state commissions addressing higher education opportunities. Is that the right word? Opportunities. And I now head up the P16 Task Force for the Governor's Business Council. So on behalf of business community in particular, I want to sincerely thank your board, your chairman, your commissioner, and Governor Rick Perry, who, by the way, I saw on the for a very extended. He did an outstanding job last night on the Fox News station. I think it was the Greta Van Susteren show. She had him on for 15 or 20 minutes. It was outstanding. But I wanted to thank you for thoughtfully asking your biggest consumer and high-risk stakeholder, those of us in business, to help with finding cost efficiencies. I really appreciate that. Of course, if you are looking for cost efficiencies in a struggling economy, you can't be wiser than to solicit the advice and counsel from businesses who frankly face extinction if we don't execute efficiently. Although your meeting calendar brings this report to you in draft mode, it is my opinion you are seeing 90% of the best thinking put forth by the best minds in business and education across the state and across the nation. And the timing of what you asked us to do couldn't be better. With an estimated state budget shortfall in the range of $15 to $20 billion for the upcoming session, with taxpayers dealing with layoffs or fearful for their jobs, tight household budgets, and adult children boomeranging back home after losing their jobs, what if, just what if, you could double the number of graduates in the Texas Grants program and not ask taxpayers for one more dime in funding? Wouldn't that be the right thing to do? This is just one of many brilliant ideas that you're receiving today. From a business perspective, some of the best things I saw in the report are funding for results, particularly student success. We have an old saying in business which goes, starve your turkeys and feed your eagles. There are recommendations for converting developmental ed from a predictor of failure to a predictor of success. There are ideas for meeting future student demand with tried and proven off-the-shelf information technology delivery strategies in lieu of bricks and mortar. And for someone like me in information technology, for no additional cost, we think you can cobble together the best online curricula already developed and paid for by taxpayers to build a strong statewide online 2-year college. Why not centralize statewide capacity planning, possibly using the same FTEs now inefficiently focused on the same task at each individual school? Why not expand capacity using performance-based contracts with private and for-profit educational institutes? I'll stop here. I'll stop for brevity. I'll go ahead and stop here, but I want to reiterate my thank you for asking business to participate in the process. And please, I beg you to take seriously all the time we invested in providing our help to the process. So thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Bernie. And I think the audience is getting the flavor for the kind of diverse and wide-ranging ideas and input that we had throughout this process of the advisory committee meeting. But I want to say it was a very collegial, very respectful, and very cooperative process. And when we conclude, I'll explain kind of how the process will continue from here on out. But our next panelist is Richard Rhodes, president of one of our Eagles, El Paso Community College. And Richard, I've asked to, in his remarks, among other things, cover the category of creating clear pathways for student success. Richard, it's your mic.
Thank God I'm not a turkey. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Chairman Heldenfels and the Commissioner and to the staff for the great job you did in organizing and orchestrating and trying to herd 20 cats, because you did an excellent job. And bringing in the outside speakers to force us to think outside of the box. I really appreciate that. And as the conversation and the discussion continued in each one of our meetings, what I also really appreciated was the fact that people focused on student success. Not what's the cheapest way to do business, but what is best for students to be successful in achieving their dreams. And that was a clear message throughout all of our conversations, and it was a good message to hear. One thing I'd like to clarify, you had introduced me as the chair-elect of the Texas Association of Community Colleges. I'm actually the current chair of the Texas Association of Community Colleges, and I'm looking forward to the day when I can be recognized as the past chair. Especially with this legislative session we're facing. Like my colleague, Dr. Rogers had said, not everything that's in this report do we completely agree with, and there's probably further discussion that needs to happen to come to complete consensus. But I think these are some big ideas that we need to focus on and continue to work on. My topic, Pathways for Student Success, though, when I think about that, I have to break out students, because I think about the students that we serve in a community college that come to us, and I have to break those into two different cohorts to really appreciate what we need to do to help students become more successful. The first cohort that I'll focus on, and this relates to our recommendations that are on page 5 and 6. The first cohort, I would say, is the pre-K through 12 cohort. They're currently in our public and private school systems, and they're working their way, trying to be prepared to continue their education into higher education. And there are certain things that we in Texas do very, very well. And there are certain areas where there are pockets that we're doing some very exciting and unique things to help students be successful. And there's some areas where we need some increased focus to be more productive in that. But if I look at where a student is in that pre-K through 12 process and what needs to happen for a student to be successful in higher education, we have to look at things such as college readiness standards. And between the coordinating board and TEA and with the Governor's Commission for College Ready Texas, we've come out with some good college readiness standards. And the second part of that then is, what do we do with those standards, and how do we make sure that those are applied equitably across the state? And that comes to assessing students' readiness. And how do we do that? End of course exams is a direction we're headed towards, but we're not there yet, and we'll have to see how that develops. But diagnosing what a student's areas of improvement, needed improvement are, is one that we can focus on short-term and long-term. And one of the suggestions and ideas is a standard for college readiness as far as assessing, so that we can then diagnose where the weaknesses are and actually make a difference in that while they're still in high school or when they come to the college or university. So we're not doing a great job, I would have to say right now, in the diagnosing where the weaknesses are, and we could get better at that. Some other things that we're doing well in the state of Texas, we're doing some very unique pre-K through 16 collaboration in all of our communities across the state. We have a great system of dual credit provided by the community colleges in high schools while students are still in high school, to actually create that pathway at earlier ages. We've got some great early college high schools. We have in excess of 40 early college high schools, and that's a growing phenomenon in Texas, that are doing very good work with preparing underserved students to be successful and to gain a step in an advantage in their career pathway through higher education. Coordinating board has been very great at assisting us with things like bridge programs, summer bridge programs, to fund students who graduate from high school but still need a little additional help during the summer so that they can be prepared to take the rigor of college-level coursework in the fall semester. And those are having some very good outcomes. Developmental education still needs a lot of work, I'll have to say, in higher education, as far as accelerating the pathway. Because when we look at community colleges and where we lose the greatest number of students, it's students who get placed into developmental education. So finding better ways, and thankfully, the legislature in the last session funded about $10 million for additional work, pilot work, in developmental education. And I think, or $5 million, I guess it is. And we're seeing some successes with the use of that money in pilot work and the outcomes that we will be seeing. Core articulation between institutions, community colleges and universities. The core that was mandated by the legislature of 42 hours being transferable puts the state of Texas, I believe, compared to other states that I've seen and visited, puts the state of Texas ahead of most of the rest, because we do have that required transferability of the core. Fields of study, however, are I would have to say, are pockets right now. There are some very good areas where we've got some good articulation between community colleges and universities on fields of study articulation. And one of the things that's happened most recently with the coordinating board's leadership is the mechanical engineering field of study articulation, trying to make that a statewide. And I think that's where we could have some better successes in statewide articulation among all community colleges and universities on the fields of study articulation, so that when a student graduates from a community college with 60 college credit hours, they feel confident that all 60 hours of those will transfer to the university and apply towards their degree. And so I think we're beginning progress, and I like what I see out of the mechanical engineering pilot. Incentives for completion of an associate degree. We really don't have any incentives that exist today other than the cost associated with attending a community college. But the transferability and the promise of a continued scholarship or grant for those who graduate from community colleges, I think could go a long way in assisting that. Statewide distance delivered education. I think we can do more and we can do better, and that's one of the areas that Bernie Francis was talking about. We do have a platform that is in existence today called the Virtual College of Texas, and I think that platform could be enhanced to take us a lot further down the road. But as an example, I will tell you that at El Paso Community College, we currently have about 8 degree programs that a student can take completely online and get an associate degree. But we have another 6 degrees where a student can get almost all of it online at El Paso Community College, but through the Virtual College of Texas can take some online programs from other community colleges in the state and get the hours required to get an associate degree. So working collaboratively in partnership with the other Texas community colleges through the Virtual College of Texas is a good platform, a good mechanism, without recreating a new university. Reverse transfers. A lot of students, the coin word today is swirling. A lot of students take courses at community colleges and universities at the same time. And there's not that traditional concept that we used to have of a transfer student that would go exclusively to a community college and then transfer to a university, but they take courses at both. And I think providing data back and forth between institutions so that we can get students' credentials when they have completed 60 college credit hours, whether it's a combination of hours at the university or at the community college. We can get them a credential, so a valued credential, so that they have that in their transcript and their resume. Financial aid, focused programs on financial aid geared towards student success and completion. One of the greatest programs that we have between the University of Texas at El Paso and El Paso Community College is a community college transfer scholarship. And what we see, the students who receive those scholarships and then transfer to UTEP, the persistence rate and the GPAs of those students is significantly higher than the normal population. And so if we can find ways to focus and leverage resources such as that. Now the other, and I'll move over to the other cohort of students, we have a large number of students who come to our community colleges and universities who are high school dropouts. They are new immigrants to the United States. They are students who have completed a GED. They are students who now are unemployed or underemployed, or those students who need skills upgrading in order to maintain their job or to get a better position within their field. And then there are a large number of students who come back because they've been homemakers, single-parent households. Their kids have grown up and now it's their time to go to college. And we see large numbers of those students. Those students, when they come to the community college, need a lot of additional help, sometimes more and at lower levels than our entry-level developmental education course. And so one of the focus areas, and thankfully again through the legislature we've received some pilot funding through the coordinating board to look at adult basic education through the coordinating board. We don't have in the state of Texas a consistent mechanism for the delivery of adult basic education to those students who are not quite ready for developmental education. We also have large numbers of students who attend our community colleges today who may be immigrants, who maybe have been in the country for a number of years and coming back into the higher education system, but their skill in English as a second language is not at the level that it should be. And on one hand, we treat English as a second language as a developmental education issue, and it really should not be. And so I think that's another focus that we need to look at for that population of students. Everything after those two levels, though, when we talk about those students entering who are dropouts or so forth, adult basic education, English as a second language, go above and beyond what we see out of the other cohort I talked about, which are the traditional high school students coming out of our public or private high schools. So I think there are a lot of great things happening, and as Whit Ryder had mentioned earlier, over the past 6 years, significant improvements have occurred throughout the state. And we continue to see more through things like Achieving the Dream. We now have 27 of our community colleges participating in Achieving the Dream throughout the state. We have 7 of our community colleges that are designated as leader colleges in Achieving the Dream throughout the United States. Great things are happening. I'll conclude on one that's outside of my realm also, and that has to do with momentum points. I happen to chair the subcommittee of the Formula Funding Committee for Community Colleges that looked at that very issue on momentum points. And we like the fact of accountability. We like the momentum points methodology that was developed in the state of Washington primarily. We just want to ensure that there is a very structured and process to develop those momentum points and to vet those out before implementation, because we are concerned about some unintended consequences that could happen if we're not very cautious in the implementation of that. Thank you for allowing me to be a member of the committee, and look forward to the future of it.
Richard, we appreciate your participation in all the great work and great ideas that you've contributed, and along with the other members. And I think your touching on momentum points is a good example of the challenge before us, because there's a pretty considerable amount of consensus on the concepts and ideas and direction we need to take, but the devil's always in the details.
Right.
And so there's a lot of work to be done on the how and when. That conversation with the community college leadership has begun and will continue over the next couple of months to culminate in the best go-forward consensus we can create, and that's true of all of these approaches with the four-year universities, with the health-related institutes.
And I just want to thank you for your openness and convening that meeting with the community colleges, the leadership.
Well, that was our pleasure. Richard, thank you. Our final panelist, Ray Messer, drew the black bean. We have 5 big ideas, but only 4 panelists. So Ray gets to cover the last 2 in his remarks, which include funding results rather than activity or good intentions, and also making capital financing make sense. So Ray, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Fred. Let me thank the board for your service to higher education in Texas, and I am honored to have been given the opportunity to serve on this committee, and thank you for that. I have a deep passion for higher education because it is what took me from a very small, rural, lower economic strata environment to where I am today. And I think affordable higher education is important for many reasons, but there are 2 primary reasons in my view. First, it provides opportunities not otherwise available to those who are first-generation college students like myself, or those who come from economically disadvantaged areas. And I think that is very important for our society. It also provides an educated workforce that Texas businesses need desperately to compete globally. With respect to the first, there have been numerous studies that show how mobile the workforce is in the United States, how people can move from one economic strata to the next. But one of the things that allows that to happen is higher education. We need a quality, hardworking, educated workforce. In my company, with a few hundred employees, almost 100% of our employees have an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, or PhD. And the vast majority of those degrees are masters and above. Now, we're a company of a few hundred employees. Think about the large public companies and how many thousands of employees they need and how many thousands of graduates they need each year at some level of higher education. So, as Fred indicated, our committee looked at funding results. We looked, as the good doctor to my right says, we looked at getting students to graduate in 4 years. the college that I'm on the board of in Montana has a tuition, room and board, and fee structure that is about 80% higher than the state system. Yet the students from Carroll College graduate with lower debt per student than the students from the university system. And there are several reasons for that, but one of the primary reasons is those students graduate in 4 years. The professors, the instructors, and the administration focus on getting those kids out in 4 years. And we're not talking about normal curriculum. We're talking about pre-med programs. We're talking about nursing programs. We're talking about engineering programs, pre-law programs. These are rigorous curriculums that they're getting out in 4 years. We need to reward students, and we talked about this in the report. We need to reward needy students who complete a rigorous high school program. We need to start people, and of course our focus was on higher ed, but the feeder program is the K through 12 system, and you just talked about that. We need to start students understanding that if they need money and they work hard in high school and are prepared for college, they will have the money to go to school and finish in 4 years. So we believe it's not necessarily that we need more money, we need better focused spending of the money that we do have. We looked at making capital financing make sense. I'm certain that most campuses have an overarching plan or a system-wide plan that addresses their capital needs. But we need to do a better job, we think, of prioritizing what those needs are. When my company moved from the Greenway Plaza area in Houston to downtown Houston, the employees came to me and said, we need more conference rooms. We don't have enough conference rooms. So we had our interior designer, space planner, take a look at that. And they had an architect in our office for several days, and they tracked the use of our space. We didn't need more conference rooms. We needed less conference rooms, less space dedicated to conference rooms, but better organized and better equipped. So we believe that we should look at data as to what the needs are as opposed to anecdotal evidence. We believe that we should focus a certain amount of funding each year, and we looked at 2% of the replacement value on renewing or renovating project, 2% of the value of the capital assets spent on renewing and renovating projects on the campus. Now, we assume that most campuses have a list of what their needs are and where the renovation is needed, and we also know that some of the campuses have very large deferred maintenance needs. This 2% does not solve the deferred maintenance problem. And by the way, as an aside, as an engineer, the term deferred maintenance is an oxymoron, because maintenance implies an ongoing process, and you don't defer an ongoing process. But institutions, companies, businesses all defer maintenance because it's the easy way out in the short term, but it creates great long-term difficulties. So this 2% would not solve the deferred maintenance problem, but it would at least stabilize the situation so that we're not digging our hole deeper and deeper. We need to take a look at different funding and bonding sources and methods. We need to be able to allow the universities and the campuses, the individual campuses, flexibility to engage in public-private partnerships. Now, it is my opinion, and it's only my opinion, that public-private partnerships are not the solution to all of our ills that we have in higher education capital needs. But it is a tool that needs to be in the toolbox for our universities to use as they look at ways to build a facility and satisfy the needs that they have on campus. So putting funding to work efficiently is, as I said, I think it was in Ford Motor Company, job one. Alternative funding for capital projects. No frills focused learning opportunities. You talked about online learning. When I was on the advisory council for Texas A&M Civil Engineering Department, we had a professor from Monterrey University, or University of Monterrey, I guess it is, in Mexico, talk about their on-learning program. They had to go to that because they couldn't afford to build the facilities they needed for all the students that they had demanding to get into the higher education system. They found that the coursework in these online courses was actually greater at a higher level than the normal, because the professors had to work hard to get that program ready. And particularly, I'm sure the first year was heck getting it ready, but you had to get that lecture done in 50 or 55 minutes. Years ago, there was a professor of physics from Caltech, had a program on PBS television about physics, and it was all done in an online environment. I loved that program. It was better than any physics course I took in engineering school. So looking at online programming, looking at no-frills focused learning centers, looking at alternative fundings for capital assets are all ways we think that we can better utilize the precious resources that we have. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate it. One point that I want to emphasize before we open it up for questions, and this is stated in the report, but I want to be sure that I call attention to it, and that is that our colleges and universities have not been standing still and complacent in this environment of declining share of state resources. Many of our institutions have already begun engaging in cost efficiency improvements and changes in the way they do business. And so we have in the report also a lot of what I would call best practices that we would like to see not just shared between our institutions, but replicated and brought to statewide scale so that all of our campuses can engage in these best practices. So we heard from our largest flagships, Texas A&M University and the University of Texas and their systems, to our community colleges and institutions of all size and description in between as to the initiatives that they have defined and implemented. And so I just want to emphasize that no one has been standing still waiting for this report. Our institutions are moving forward. I also want to just briefly, for those of you who have not yet had the opportunity in the audience to read the report, kind of give you some of the characteristics that we took or used to develop this report. First, it does focus on some short-term action recommendations, some of which may require policy action, many of which do not, that the institutions can implement at the system or campus level on their own volition. As part of doing that, though, we've been very conscious of trying to develop ideas that incentivize statewide and institutional behavior, but do not micromanage our institutions, because that's not the role of either the coordinating board or even statewide policy. That's up to the leadership at the institutions to figure out the how on many of these action items. We also do have long-term study and systemic recommendations for change that will take more than just the next few months to implement. And finally, as I mentioned, the best practices that we'd like to see replicated and brought to scale. And I would say that, all of us on the committee have sort of taken that 80-20 approach, that if we can devise solutions that impact 80% of what we have to deal with, that are even 80% effective, we'll be way ahead of the game. So it's not about perfecting the sophisticated and complex, slowly implemented things, but identifying, those things that can have near-term, statewide systemic impact. And finally, we're really talking about a cultural change, not just a short-term reaction to a looming budget crisis, but a real change in the culture of higher education toward continuous improvement in a lean, productive environment, not just for our institutions, but for the use of our state resources and the use of our student and family resources and the expectations of our students as well. That's why we talk about a shared responsibility in the report. So with those comments, and I'll talk a little bit about the process forward, but I'd like to now open it up for questions of our panelists as to the contents or ideas of the report. So board members?
Fred, can I make a comment? And first of all, I want to compliment the four gentlemen that are here before us this morning and the presentations that they've made. You've done an outstanding job. You've brought a lot of things to light this morning that this board needs to really think about. Obviously, there's a lot of work that's left to be done. But I want to compliment you all four for making the effort to be here and making such an outstanding presentation with this board. I think your presentation kind of begs the question as to whether or not we have set out and really looked at what the long-term needs of this state really is, and what they really are, perhaps, I should say. And it seems to me that we tend to act and react to the political terrain being what it may be at that particular moment in time. And for instance, how do we go about making decisions as to where we open up new institutions? How do we go about making those decisions as to how we allocate our resources statewide to meet these ever-growing and ever-changing demands and needs? I would propose that if it hasn't been done, that we give serious thought to sitting down as an agency or collectively with all stakeholders and really looking at the demographics of this state and anticipating where those needs are and what they're going to be, and coming up with some form of a statewide strategic plan. You know, I hear all about all of these individual institutional strategic plans, but do we have collectively a statewide strategic plan that makes sense, that's well thought out, that's not based on the political climate and as it is at that particular moment, that we know is ever changing and evolving? Do we open up a new institution in this part of the state because of the person who happens to be politically in a position to make that happen? And if that's what we do, is that truly a good way to allocate our resources to really move Texas forward? So, you know, I think maybe the coordinating board, with the support of all stakeholders, maybe need to really look at how feasible it would be to looking at a lot of this information and developing. Fred, you may be able to help me and enlighten me as to whether or not do we have that? Do we have
part of what you're describing, Dr. Golden, is, at least in my view, and the panelists can weigh in on this, one of the recommendations that we were suggesting take place between now and 2013, not in lieu of our short-term actions and improvements, but to complement that, is to measure and define a strategic investment. Because I know you're not talking about our strategic plan closing.
No, that's not at all what I'm talking about.
Funding both capital and operating systemically, we are recommending that we do something very similar to what I think you're describing as let's call it an intermediate term recommendation over the next 2 years.
I see a lot of what I would describe as kind of knee-jerk reactions to politics, and I'm not necessarily blaming politicians for all of our problems. I'm simply saying is that as educators, as professionals like our commissioner is, looking at and sitting down and methodically going over what their true needs are and then mapping out a roadmap, this will give the decision makers and the people and the politicians at least something that they can fall back on and say, you know what, this isn't just something that someone from a certain demographic area of the state has come forward in this particular session and they're trying to muster up the political clout to make this happen. This has been well thought out. This is a group of people who have built a consensus and ascertained what our real needs are over a long period of time to really move Texas to the top. And, you know, I think a lot of what you guys are alluding to is that, are those things that I'm voicing here this morning. But, you know, it's just to me it seems like we kind of be helter-skelter sometime in how we go about doing things. We're hit and miss, hit and miss. Now, that doesn't mean that some of the things that we're doing, particularly with closing the gap, that's a well-thought-out plan that we're seeing in the results. We're seeing results. But some type of strategic plan in terms of allocating resources to truly truly make sure those resources are being used in the most cost-effective and the most efficient way possible on a statewide basis is what I'm trying to ask and what I'm trying to...
Dennis, would you like
Yes.
to let the panelists respond?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just give it a shot. I'm not sure that the helter-skelter effect can be mitigated until we somehow empower this board to pursue what's in the best interest of education in Texas without the legislative stakeholders in status quo. I wish that this board here had the independent authority to do what's right for education in Texas. And until that happens, I'm just not sure about how effective we're going to be able to move in that direction.
Well, I don't disagree with what was just stated, but I think the idea of a strategic plan starts you down the path, an education strategic plan, not a financing strategic plan, starts you down the path to say, this is what we need, and we need the independence to execute this. Maybe that's one way to get at the problem that you just addressed. But I will say, if misery loves company, Texas is not the only state that has that problem of putting campuses in given locations because of political will on a given person's part.
I don't want to necessarily overemphasize the campus issues. I'm basically focusing on all resources, and I just think we could perhaps be a little more effective if we had a well thought out methodology in how we make those decisions. And I don't think it's necessarily because of a lack of leadership and attempt on the part of this board, but how can we change the culture in such a way that we get just all stakeholders to buy into the direction we're trying to lead? That's my question. I guess that's the $50 million question that's going to be difficult to answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dennis. Questions from Commissioner?
I have a question of President Rhodes. We've talked about this issue of adult basic education, and I think about we keep hearing over and over and over again from community college presidents, and I certainly sympathize with this point of view that we are just admitting an awful lot of students are going into community colleges who are simply not prepared to do college level work. And then I think about this issue from the opposite end as well. And I'll explain that in a moment. I'm just wondering, do you think that we have to get to the point sometime soon where we use admission standards for community colleges? I'm not suggesting that students who have these meager academic skills that you talked about a few moments ago should be excluded from our educational system, but whether we need to find some other way to deal with basic literacy and basic computational skills and recognize that a community college as an institution of higher education is not the appropriate place to deal with these issues. On the other end, I've noticed that there are some community colleges around the country that are beginning to adopt admission standards for fields like nursing because there's so much interest in fields like that you can really attract the very brightest people into a field like that and get much better completion rates and licensure rates. And I'm wondering how you feel about that issue.
Yeah, on areas such as nursing, we already have that. I was talking to our dean of nursing the other day. We had 1,000 applicants, and by the time they go through the screening process to see if they're ready for that type of a rigorous program, it knocks it down from 1,000 to 250 students. But then we only have 90 slots open for them. And so we have those screening for those types of professional programs. On the first question on what about should we have entrance requirements in community colleges, my question always is when I look at my community and I say, if not the community college, then who? Because there's no alternative. What we need, I think, within the state of Texas is a very strategic direction on funding resources such as ABE funding that comes from the federal government to the state of Texas. We need to be more strategic on how we allocate those funds to get the biggest cost efficiency for the use in student achievement. Because I think if they're refocused in community colleges so that we can take a look at a student who comes in and takes an Accuplacer or a Compass test, and we can do the diagnostics and say you're ready for this level or it's below the entry level, then we have an alternative for them and an alternative funding source that is very strategic to assist them to get them to the level to where they can be successful. My fear is, though, that if we create some kind of entry standards in community colleges, we are going to alienate and forget a large population that needs us more than anybody else.
Well, I don't think anybody would recommend that we go to a policy of admission standards for community colleges without simultaneously developing an educational pathway for the kinds of students that you talk about in El Paso.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that financial pathway just doesn't exist today. And I'm thankful that we've got some money to do some pilots to look at ABE, the connection between ABE and developmental education, but the financial pathway just does not exist right now.
Could I ask a follow-up question? And that is, does a student who drops out, who makes the effort and doesn't succeed, okay, did they achieve any value? I mean, and if so, if that's the name of our game, maybe we should be right up front with it. Because the very students you're talking about, Commissioner, they're not likely to make it. And if that be the case, was it worth their money? Was it worth their time? Was it worth, that's my question.
Well, I think we can develop strategies that give everybody, virtually everybody, basic skills in literacy and computation, and position them to earn jobs that pay a living wage. And I think we probably have to be more modest in some of our goals for a segment of our population that doesn't have the time to take 2 years or 3 years of developmental education. They have families, they're single parents, and they need jobs.
But it's really going in another different direction. I'm kind of come back. One of the things I did not really see within the body of work that was presented here, but I'm curious as to what was discussed between private sector and the academic side was. These board members know this has been a burning desire of me, but I don't think that we found an effective way to measure learning outcomes as to the end product that's coming out of our universities. And I guess my question is, was that discussed? Because I couldn't agree more with you, Jesse, on the 4-year projection, funding and results, all those issues that Ray brought up. But was there any discussion between the business side and academic side to really saying, once we get our students out, how are we measuring the product that we're developing in the state of Texas? Because I know there's been a lot of efforts made at that, and that's something that I think everybody on this board still is trying to say in our next part of our strategic plan, which will come after closing the gaps. To me, that's a critical element that we've got to discuss. Did that come up in the conversation at all?
Well, I'll put my foot in my mouth maybe on that one, but no. And I will tell you this, that I think in senior institutions anyway, we're all still struggling with the evaluation of outcomes, which is the centerpiece of regional accreditation. It's called learning effectiveness, institutional effectiveness, and I've read many accrediting reports of many fine universities, and we have yet, I think, to develop sound, dependable outcome evaluations. And maybe we just avoided the topic, but it's something that we must pin down and continue to deal with, and I think we will get there, but we're still in my opinion, the middle of the process. I can tell you all the reasons that it's difficult, but I can't tell you in my mind exactly how we, I would say accurate, I don't know if that's the correct word or not, do measure outcomes that we can depend upon and tell us that our learning objectives have been met. It is a very difficult topic. All universities are struggling with it. It is, again, required of us for regional accreditation, and it's just a problem. But I don't really think we attacked and addressed that problem, but we're struggling with it.
I'm not an academician, so I don't know how you measure those things from an academic's perspective, but I do know there's an organization I'm a member of called the Design Futures Council, which is focused on architecture. And that organization does a survey every year of the architectural community, and they rate architectural schools and the quality of graduates that get out of those schools. And it creates lots of havoc with the schools of architecture because I wasn't on that list, I didn't show up, why didn't I show up? And it forces them to go back and rethink what their curriculum might be, and why is it that the architectural firms are not rating them very high and they're rating these firms or these schools and these schools high. So that's a survey. I'm sure it's not with great academic rigor like the institutions that rate you would want, but it's one way. You go to the business community who uses the graduates.
I will say, I think the most difficult area of evaluation is one that we talk about all the time. We all know this, that our graduates today are going to hold many positions and many careers because that's the nature of the workforce out there today. And I think the center of any education is critical thinking. And that is the most difficult part. I delight in our professional areas that have professional licensure examinations because everyone's happy with that. It's easy to do. But the thing that's most important about education, I believe, is the thing that is most difficult for us to evaluate, and that is the long-term ability to make changes and to think critically however you get there. And there's a lot of ways to get there, whether it's a philosophy course or great literature or whatever. There are many ways to become a good critical thinker, and that's what we're trying to produce, and it's the hardest thing, in my opinion, there is to evaluate. Evaluation of our 42-hour core curriculum is the thing that we struggle with more than anything. There are a lot of very practical problems in there, and the area that we should be most concerned with is the one that is most difficult to evaluate.
I just think we've got to find a way to link back into industry.
Yes.
We can measure the academic side, but somehow over time, and we talk a lot about, we've got to have industry, private sector being a part of that process like you described, Ray. And I know it's a huge issue. There's some easy ways to do that. If there's if you're maybe in nursing vocation and measure those where there's certifications and measure it, and it's harder if it's maybe in architecture or engineer or whatever. But I think somehow we've got to partner up with industry to figure that out.
If I could just note with our Lumina project, the tuning aspect of what we're doing makes a direct link between the academic programs and industry. And so we have additional engineering fields engaged in that process right now, and that's going to continue for the next 4 years. And so I think that provides part of what you're talking about. I also mentioned, you were talking about learning outcomes. When there was some discussion of competency-based education related to Phoenix, University of Phoenix, and Western Governors University. While it's not the same thing, that the commissioners actually talked with graduate deans about that recently. But there's several things that aren't addressed directly in the report, but we've
David, there was also testimony, you might, and I forget the gentleman's name, I think it was the professor from Villanova, who also was a consultant to Forbes magazine, and he talked about the employer index survey that he helped develop for Forbes ranking of institutions of higher learning. Do you remember his name, David?
I don't know off the top of my head.
That should be Professor Vetter, that's right.
Yeah.
So that, while that's not drawn forth into the summary of recommendations, there was testimony on that idea. He alluded to how he helps one magazine use that as 20% of their criteria for ranking. The other thing we did talk about was the need not only to engage industry in measuring outcomes, but the need to engage industry in an ongoing dynamic way in defining what output is needed by business in Texas. There's no real consensus on, while we know our goal for 2015 is to increase by another 46,000 completions per year, there's no consensus over how many bachelors, how many associates, how many certificates, much less how do we define that going forward beyond 2015. And that was part of the discussion as well. Richard, do you have a comment?
I just might add, too, one of the things that you'll find in the community colleges is for our career and technical programs, we have what's called program advisory committees, and we have people such as Ray and Bernie, professionals in the industry that serve on those committees and give us feedback on a number of things. Number one is, how do our students do when they come out of the program and go to work for you, and how do we need to modify the curriculum to make it more in tune and in line with what you need as a business and industry. And we do that in all of our career and technical programs, so we get that feedback on a constant basis, continual basis. Another way is to look at licensure for those programs such as nursing that we've got, and dental assisting and dental hygiene and those types of programs. The other thing we look at, too, is a lot of students want to go on and get a bachelor's degree out of the community college, and so we track with the universities and see how did those students perform in the university setting when they took the upper division coursework. And so we get feedback on that as to their outcomes. That doesn't necessarily answer the full part of your question on that, on bachelor's degrees, but I'll tell you, on career and technical programs, we try to stay very in tune with what business and industry wants, and also through program review processes at our institutions, we take a look at different measuring factors, such as the numbers of students who graduated out of a program, were they placed, did they find employment, and if the indicators are not good, we'll close the program. And so we do shift resources based on feedback such as that.
Thank you, Richard.
Can I make one quick note? Just, we've surveyed institutions, and we started with the UT and A&M systems. I just want to point out, as you mentioned earlier, there are things that are going on at institutions, and we have individual institutions who are actively assessing outcomes in individual courses. The University of Texas system with the CLA, the Collegiate Learning Assessment, which is a broader attempt at the critical thinking that was talked about, but no one's satisfied. So I think it's important to note that efforts are being made right now, but they're not totally satisfactory to anyone at this point. I'm sorry, Elaine.
No, that's okay.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just the last comment on that, and that is that both gentlemen, Mr. Mercer and Mr. Francis, serve in higher education capacities, advisory council for civil engineering at A&M, for example, and then a board of regent member there. So that directly, it's industry's responsibility to get involved at that level. To be able to be right on the front lines with civil engineering, for example, with an expert like this, I hope that A&M took advantage and asked you for your insights and requirements of those degree programs.
And my money.
Well, of course. And I hope you were gracious and giving. Mr. Chairman, and I address you as chairman of our board as well as chairman of this great committee. the way you all have laid out the reports it's just phenomenal with respect to being able to understand and see where the connectivity is within the recommendations from Dr. Rogers' point of view in creating a college-going culture. Thank you for broadening that to really a college-going and completing culture. We're doing a lot of work under Judy's, Dr. Laredo's group in creating a college-going culture, and we need to now add that college completion culture, which is a really great insight. And I really appreciate the theme about the college readiness standards that both Dr. Rhodes and yourself brought up, that they're a cornerstone for the things that we can do to be cost-effective over the long term, a real, true systemic change. And we just need to, Mr. Chairman, as we go forward, make sure that that continues forward. And then addressing the issues of using information technologies going forward. Our kids, they're not going to know anything else. They're going to wonder what we're doing with all this paper and books and things like that when they're so versed in technology and the multimedia and et cetera, et cetera. I remember the video games we played was one ping pong going back and forth, and that's it. Now they're motion and everything else. I mean, they're just different than who we are today. So we really have to pick up on that. And Dr. Rhodes, of course, that separation of adult basic education and developmental education, and then those students coming out of the pipeline is encouraging to I know the commissioner forcing our team to take a look at how do we do that and how we can support that better is right on target, and it does go right at cost efficiencies. And finally, with respect to how do we use capital and how do we do our deferred maintenance is key and all that. And I hope, Mr. Mercer, you mentioned better data. I hope we can have those systems that will enable us to really make decisions based on data. All that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm really encouraged by your final recommendation of creating a council that looks at continuous improvement. So my final question is, how can we make that go forward? Because that council, from what it says in the report, is going to take a look at all of this and not only improve on it, refine it, but also keep it alive.
Well, hopefully we will see the formation of a statewide council that's not unlike the advisory committee that we formed. We are also encouraging the idea of continuous improvement councils to be formed at the system and campus level as well. The idea there is to come in with a council that can monitor the impact of the short-term action recommendations, but just as importantly, continue to monitor ongoing process of cultural change. How can we define not only long-range systemic planning, but really the empowerment of our faculty and staff to meet in small groups to come up with ways to improve the productivity in their own departments and classrooms and operational areas. And that's really the idea behind continuous improvement as a cultural change. It is not something you dictate from on high or force from the top down, but rather something that you build culturally from the folks, the boots on the ground, so to speak, the folks that are out there teaching the students, operating the fiscal plans, managing the design and construction of our facilities, and allow them the time and the resources in the form of the two things I like to say about a lean culture is it's creativity before capital, and it's quick and crude solutions rather than slow and elegant. And that's the mentality that we need to adopt, and hopefully the council will serve the purpose of encouraging and continuing that. We've seen different models. The state of Iowa actually has a director of continuous improvement that is a cabinet-appointed position that reports to the governor. That may or may not be the model for Texas, but we need that kind of prioritization and attention to that process. Let me just briefly state that going forward, this advisory committee on cost efficiency will meet again on August 17th to do our level best at adopting the final report, identifying consensus, being honest about where there may not be consensus, and then carrying forward that report and its recommendations to the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee in September. We'll hear the final report at that committee meeting and then make a recommendation to the coordinating board. The coordinating board in its October meeting will adopt our final recommendations on this to the governor in a report, and the legislature in a report that will be submitted no later than November 1st, and address the challenges that we were tasked with in the executive order. So that's the process moving forward.
I have a comment also, before we close it.
Okay, Durga, go ahead.
I heard about Virtual College of Texas. I think we have to look at something that we can do. Maybe we can have a pilot program for 1 year where students don't have to go to college. They can take courses online. Like Elaine was talking about information technology, get a benefit of information technology. We talk about students are graduating in 6 years. Maybe 1 year of their program can be just going to virtual college, which will cost lesser money, and maybe you can design a pilot program where these maybe 1,000 students or 100 students can take 1 year online course from the Virtual College of Texas, and shave off from 6 years to 5 years, 4 years to 3.5 years for graduation. And that one way we may be able to graduate more students with lesser money. Is that something practical? So is there a Commissioner, do you think we can come up with some kind of a pilot program where we can have 1,000 or 10,000 students or 100 students take virtual course for 1 year?
We've talked about that. I think the first thing we have to do is take an inventory of all the various opportunities that are currently available to do online learning in Texas. There are a lot of universities that do online instruction, have fully online programs. You have the Virtual College of Texas. Western Governors University has students in Texas. We need to make sure we fully understand what's out there already, and then see how we can put things together into one coherent program.
It will certainly reduce the cost by 10-15% across the board.
And we need to look at that. I know that obviously UT is looking at an alternative to the telecampus, and there's a lot of other activity going on around the state.
Just one more comment. That there's a great deal of activity going on, but one of the issues is the efficiency. And with multiple institutions doing pieces of this, you don't realize the full cost effectiveness of the process. And so things like virtual college help, but it can be taken to another level in terms of joint development of courses, really taking better advantage of technology. So the basis is there, but now how do we get the real efficiency and make it more obvious to the student rather than sort of searching all over the state to find where the opportunities are, because they certainly exist.
Well, let me assure the board, Durga, that we will take all of the feedback and questions and ideas we've got today and make that part of the process when we reconvene this advisory committee August 17th as we go forward from taking this from draft to final report. I appreciate your service, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience and your input, and we still have more work to do, and I know I can count on seeing you August 17th to help lead that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to agenda item 5, which is the recognition of excellence item. It's meant to showcase models of excellence within the education community and highlight outstanding work of our education faculty and administrators and our institutional programs. Today, we're recognizing Texas A&M University's centralized classroom scheduling system. This is an example of exactly what I was talking about and what David reiterated, that we have institutions who are already moving forward to improve productivity and efficiency on their campuses. With us today to present this item are James Massey, who is Director of the Office of Facilities Coordination at Texas A&M University, and Karen Watson, the Interim Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Texas A&M University. Welcome, and I see you brought 2 additional...
Backup.
Some backup?
Yes, sir.
In case you need to clear a path out of here. So I will let you all introduce them.
Okay. We also have Sean Cantrell, who did all of the data analysis for us, who is also serving his last day with us at Texas A&M because he's going for some exciting service elsewhere. And we have Andy Armstrong, who works as the assistant registrar. I just want to introduce James, who did the majority of this work. But before I do that, I want to point out that we think that you may find other institutions have done similar things to what we are talking about here, so we don't think it's rocket science what we have done, but we would emphasize to you that there's a complexity of cultures that had to interact at the university to get this done. He's laughing at me. The culture between the academicians, the faculty, and what they think is the right way to do room assignments. The culture between the facilities people who have to work to make sure we're using the facilities as efficiently and effectively as possible, as well as the registrar, whose job is to make sure the students can get where they need to be and hopefully have the right faculty there at the right time. May seem like a trivial thing to many people outside of academia, but I want to assert to you that getting all of these things to work together was a challenge for a complex institution such as our own. And with that, I'll turn it over to James, who will talk about what we've done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner, board members, staff. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about something that we feel like we're very proud of, that we're very have been doing actually for a long time. You can imagine, you know, the enrollment. I'll show you a graph here in a minute in the PowerPoint that's over here. Our enrollment has pressed us to this need. Whether it's the right thing or not to do, it's something that we needed to do because we were growing so quickly, and that the active management of our classrooms dictated the need to move forward with this. And of late, there's been some administrative actions, very supported administratively, to allow us to work with the different cultures. That's interesting because there's a lot of people who are very interested in classrooms and how they're used and how well, and more importantly, where do I have to go as a student or for a faculty member to accomplish that. So what I want to briefly do is to orient you to what our goals are, to give you a sense of basically what we're trying to accomplish. And if you've seen the PowerPoint, basically our first goal was to support the instructional needs of our students and our faculty. That may seem like a foregone conclusion, but we wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page on that, and that all the different cultures that were there were in fact committed to that, and it was something that was easy to get to because that's exactly where we were. We also wanted to make sure from an operational standpoint that the request for times and locations on a large campus as ours was also a part of our goal. We wanted to make sure that they were, from a planning perspective, were right size, properly designed. In other words, had the right size and fit for the faculty to be able to interact with the students and vice versa. That they were technologically outfitted. You mentioned earlier about the chalkboard days are all gone, and the PowerPoint is a matter of course, and the internet and Facebook and others are fastly becoming a part of our delivery method, and we needed to make sure that was there. And of course, with the question of deferred maintenance, or however you call that now, make sure that the rooms are well maintained. We also are very, very cognizant of the fact that we are part of the stewardship of the state, and we want to make sure that the board standards and even the other entities at the state, that the requirements that are placed upon us are ones that are taken and used and managed as well as we could to them. You can see that with some of the metrics that we're going to talk about here in a minute, that we're getting to that point that we're going to be able to show you that we really are, with our numbers, doing very well. But we we deal with partnerships, and we're very proud to appreciate what you as a board do and allow your staff to do to facilitate the kind of things that we're doing at the institutional level. Your staff is great, I'll tell you that. We can go to the next slide. You can see historically that the metrics may not place us at the top. In fact, we, for a long time, were below, as were many of the institutions across the state. I think that one time there was maybe as many as 4 or 5 that actually met the guideline of the previous metrics. But we knew we were doing better than that, and I was fortunate to be a part of, in fact, the chair of the committee that put together the space usage efficiency model that y'all have advocated and supported, and we really appreciate that, because what it really does is it allows the likes of Texas A&M to show you how well we were actually using our classrooms. The metrics that were there were ones that we had already been thinking about and using and managing with, and the result of that is really, I think, more of a representative look at how we're using our standard. And if you just look at the 2008 and 9 models that were put forward, we were 3rd in the state in utilization of our classrooms. And not only that, but we meet and exceed the expectations that you and the state have for us. So we are, I believe, have found a metric that we need to use. Go to the next slide. You see the graph there. That's part of the reason that we're growing. I mean, or why we need to do this. Those of us that were around during that steepest spike in enrollment at Texas A&M know what it's like to scramble for classrooms and to go to class and to dodge bulldozers and other things to try to keep up with that growth. You know what I'm talking about. I will also tell you that anecdotally, students have felt like Texas A&M is a marathon training ground. We have 500. We actually have about 11,000 acres, but in our inventory. But there's 500 acres that we have that basically we deal our classroom scheduling with, and we're getting ready to open a new building, an engineering technology and economic development building in the months ahead. And if a student had to move from that building over to our George Bush complex, which has political science and economics in the Bush School, they would have to find a way to move almost 3 miles to go between those classes. And so what we have is maybe an atypical kind of passing pattern of 20 minutes. Well, to show you that maybe we incrementally could have been doing better, was a task force or scheduling that we put together, and we found that unfortunately there were scheduling patterns that were out of alignment, if you will. And fortunately, with the support of our administration, we were able to start moving those back together so the students really did have a 20-minute passing period to make that marathon run. They're not just running or riding bikes or walking. There are, of course, a very complex and efficient bus system that helps them to accomplish that and all. But again, it's a complex environment that we need to put together the good planning purposes, a scheduling of our classrooms so that we can optimize the success of our students. We've always been heavily involved and appreciative of the coordinating board staff's work on the facilities inventory, and it's a data point with our partnership with our registrar colleagues that we can use to more efficiently plan and to provide that classroom support. By pulling all the classrooms into a centralized system, which actually only occurred about 2 years ago. There was about a quarter of our classrooms that were scheduled by the departments. It's not that they lost those classrooms, they're still part of a priority system, but now the registrar has a full set to be able to schedule from and do it more efficiently and make sure that we're matching the needs with the facilities, and that comes from the facilities inventory. May not seem like rocket science, but to be able to match your section size to your classroom size was something that we weren't doing real good until a couple of years ago, but now we're starting to make that a goal, so that because of just the fact of the realities of our capital budgets and such as that. We know we have to manage these rooms and be conscious of that. We're also very conscious of the fact that we need to maintain and renovate those classrooms to keep the kind of technology and the kind of needs that the students expect and demand. We're also, as we plan our buildings, and from henceforth, when you see a project from Texas A&M, those plans are not coming directly from the user coordinator. They're going through the chief academic officers to make sure that, as a university resources, that they are being right-sized and planned well. And we're getting ready to commission an agricultural building, and then we did just that. We were able to work with our office, the registrar office, to right-size those rooms, not only for what they need now, but what they would projectedly need into the future. So not only are we being efficient, we're trying to continue that theme as we plan for our future. I want to give, through this, I want to give the staff, back up one please. I want to give your staff and yourself some appreciative note, because we mentioned the staff or the space usage efficiency model. This model is a major step forward to not only just evaluating and almost saying, I got you if you're not doing it right. It gives the institutions a tool to be able to better plan and use their facilities. Not only were we just looking at hours per week, and we could have a whole session on how or good or bad that was, but there are other demand factors and percent filled factors that were a part of that model that I think provided a better profile, and we embraced that, and were interesting enough, was not much of a change of what we're doing at Texas A&M. We were looking at that full component of trying to manage our space. So we're really doing well. If we do go to the next slide, you can, again, I'm not going to try to read this to you, but you can see, and this is something that you
want to know what's on there, you're going to have to read it.
Well, basically, you've approved this, so I'm sure that you knew this. But basically, it gives the demand utilization and percent filled factors of classroom utilization, the time and due that they need from a technical perspective, and it also translates to a policy and to boots on the ground, getting the students taken care of. So again, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but just say thanks to your staff, from Susan and Gary and Tom and Jennifer and Paul and everyone that's been a part of trying to work with us, not tell us what to do, but to work with us to get that done. The last slide is just really basically a reiteration of the fact that we're doing our best to continue to keep these kinds of goals in our mind, and not in Aggie form, maybe starting at the bottom and because of where we are here, but to be able to say that the regulatory requirements, at least from a staff level, and I think from an administration and institutional level, are more in line with what we're trying to do institutionally to address the needs of our students. And so there's a wealth of other things that we could talk about and would love to talk about with this, but I wanted to at least give you a taste of something that's really going good in College Station. Thank you very much.
So I want to say one more thing just quickly. Again, it's fairly simplistic that we have to have the departments offering the courses tell us how many students they want in the course, and then we do the best job we can to schedule that class near the home department. But we will not sacrifice efficiency to get it near the home department. So we will not put 40 students in a 300-student classroom so that the faculty member doesn't have to walk very far. We will work very hard to make sure that we can get it as close to where the students may be clustered in their classes because they're in this department, and as close to where the faculty may be, but we will prioritize using the classrooms efficiently over location, if you will, or convenience, if you will.
Thank you, Karen and James. A great presentation. And I know the students appreciate the fact that the solution wasn't that they all run the 7-minute mile to get from class to class. Members, questions or comments regarding the presentation? I will say that one of the things I appreciate and have observed is the process of listening to the users in terms of both students and faculty. I got to spend some time, and I seen back there in the audience with Virgil Gay last week looking at some of the new projects going on in College Station, and he shared with me how he's opened up the process of the design and construction of new facilities or renovation of existing facilities to bring in more user input. And I commend that, commend what you all have created here, and would encourage all of our institutions to engage in more of that cross-departmental and vertical communication about how we can most effectively use our space. Elaine?
And Mr. Chairman, along that exact sentiment, I was going to ask, is that you see as the cornerstone or linchpin to getting the results that you all got? And is there two other best practices that we can list in addition to what the chairman just described?
I think that a linchpin, a very important linchpin, is to make sure that there is a university perspective, not just an individual perspective, on how we're going to assign classroom. And we had that 3/4 of the way, but the last quarter was causing some problems. And so getting that last quarter linked in with the system really helped us quite a bit. I think that another big challenge that we have and continue to deal with, but I think most institutions are trying to figure out, is how to right-size your classroom. And with different instructional approaches, this can be a huge variation. For example, you can have 300 students assigned to a class who watch most of their lectures on the web, but come for small group interactions, but then where do they take their tests? And so trying to figure out, maybe we didn't need a 300 section lecture hall, but we do have to figure out some things about how we're going to manage tests. So as the technology is causing us to rightfully change how we're going to deliver the classes, it's created a whole new challenge, and the metrics that are more complex that y'all have adopted have actually given us better planning tools on demand and usage, and not just how many hours we were using the classroom, to do much better planning on what size classrooms are we missing, and what should we do about that. And I think not only doing that looking backwards, but trying to do that as you look forward at some very different models of instruction is very useful to us, those tools.
Yeah, that's a great example. The student regents have been an active adjunct group to our Cost Efficiency Council, and they were charged with looking at electronic textbooks and electronic learning. One of the things we heard from some of the student regents was that they would listen to their lectures online and then show up 2, 3, 4 times a semester to take the tests.
Right.
And that on the rare occasion when they might actually sit in the hall, there'd be maybe 20 or 30 students, as you said, in a 300 capacity classroom. But of course it fills up on the peak demand of test day.
Right.
So that we are in a much more dynamic, changing environment for using our physical facilities, and I appreciate how you all are recognizing and dealing with that. Any other questions or comments, members? Sean or Andy, anything that y'all want to recommend? Or did a good job.
Andy's a short timer. He may be able to solve all of our worries.
Well, thanks for bringing down the average age of the panel.
I think there's a compliment in there somewhere.
And the computer literacy was greatly enhanced by those two guys.
Yeah,
Believe me, I understand.
Oh, I saw you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
All right. The next item is Agenda Item 6. So these are the items from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Policy, which is chaired by Lynn Phillips. Lynn could not be with us at today's meeting, so Vice Chairman Mendoza will direct this part of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and of course I will do no justice to filling Dr. Phillips' shoes, but I will give it a shot. She graciously put a lot of things on the consent agenda, so I think we're going to move quickly through this. Board members may note before we move into the actual items that there were institutions requested approval of or evaluation of 42 construction, rehabilitation, and property purchase projects. The cost for the projects totaled $917 million. So I guess having that preamble of our cost efficiencies is very much on target. Since the April board meeting, the Committee on Strategic Planning and Policy has acted on 9 construction, rehabilitation, and land acquisition projects, totaling $195 million. The Commissioner considered 8 additional construction, etc. projects totaling $350 million. And then the Assistant Commissioner looked at projects totaling over more than $97 million. So given that overview, let's go ahead and move right on through the agenda. Agenda item 6B was on the consent calendar. Agenda item 6C, this agenda item is actions taken by the Committee on Strategic Planning and Policy on construction, rehabilitation, and property purchase projects. They're listed in your packet. Are there any questions about the projects? That's for information only. Okay. Agenda item 6D is facilities decisions made by the Commissioner or the Assistant Commissioner since the previous board meeting. This is, again, an informational item for the board, and no action is required. Are there any questions, comments about those projects? While you're looking at that, refreshing your memory on that, the committee meeting last month was really complete. So we did a lot of debate and discussion at that point. It was a long one. Any comments or questions? Agenda item 6E, F, and G were on consent calendar, along with agenda item 6H, 1 through 5 were all on the consent calendar. You'll notice that items 6I through N were on the consent calendar as well. Man, Lynn really set me up well. I like her. Okay. You'll notice that agenda item 6O is on consent, but it's worthy of note, and I know if Dr. Phillips were here, she would want to mention that. This item is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the Board relating to the report on the feasibility of expanding Texas Community College baccalaureate programs. We did talk about this in June. However, we voted to postpone voting on this item until today. Except after further review, the Commissioner is recommending that the Board postpone again consideration of this report so the report may be considered by the committee in September. So that is why it's on consent, because that is the recommendation. It's on consent? I saw it on the other. It's pulled back?
Correct.
It was pulled off. Okay.
I think it's because the recommendation changed to just what you said.
Well, actually, it is on consent.
The recommendation did change. The recommendation is as Ms. Mendoza just described it, as I understand it. And so the Commissioner's recommendation would be to postpone consideration back to the committee in September with the thought that it would then come to the October board.
Well, we have 2 different copies here. Mine has O on consent. Okay. Is the official? Awesome.
So, Bill, we're okay with the consent. We're okay with the action taken earlier for this item in adopting the consent calendar.
No.
No, this item should not have been on
This item should not have been on the consent calendar.
Well, what I'm going to request, just for clarity's sake, is that we go ahead and take this item up as an action item based on the recommendation.
Either way.
That's in the book here, just so there's no question or doubt.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
I didn't want it to be too easy.
I know. Okay. Did Lynn call you up and say, hey, give her a hard time? Okay. Agenda item O, 6O.
Thank you, ma'am. This item is actually the study that we have been working on with the 3 community colleges that have currently the baccalaureate programs, and we have worked with them on revisions, and we would continue to be working with them and want to meet with them at the Commissioner's request, as well as the request of the Chairman of SPP. And so in order to have time to do that, we wanted to delay the final consideration of this item until the September SPP meeting, and would ask at this time to delay consideration of this, postpone consideration of this until the September SPP meeting, and would need to ask for a reconsideration of the vote to approve this on the consent calendar for today.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to put that in the form of a motion, if I may.
Thank you, Dr. Golden. You're a brave soul. Is there a second? Thank you, Durga. Okay, I apologize for the confusion on that, but
As do I, ma'am. I
thank you
apologize.
for clearing that up, and also for taking the committee's discussion and putting it into action so that we'll be ready to discuss it further, not only in September but in October. Are there any other further comments or suggestions? If not, I have a motion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, and then at this time, I would ask that there be a motion to postpone consideration of this until the September SPP meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Golden. Is there a second? Durga, thank you. Again, any further comments or questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Madam Chair, I apologize
Motion
for the
carries.
confusion.
No problem. Okay, well, that was exciting. Okay, agenda items 6P and 6Q are on the consent calendar. I asked with a question mark. Agenda item 6R. 6R was on the consent calendar as well. And we're moving into the agenda item 6S's here. Consideration of proposed rule changes. 6S1 is on consent. That takes us to agenda item 6S2. This is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the Board on Chapter 15, Subchapter C, Sections 15.4 through 15.44, or Board rules concerning National Research University Fund. McGregor?
Thank you. This item, again, we are asking to postpone this due to some comments that we received back during the comment period. We wanted to have an opportunity, since the comment period ended subsequent to the SPP meeting, we wanted to have an opportunity to work with the institutions to make sure everybody was clear on any changes that we would make with respect to the comments. And so by postponing this until the September meeting, we'll give the 7 emerging research institutions the opportunity to look at the revisions that we're going to propose and move forward. Most of them are very standard, but we didn't want there to be any question because this has been a very collaborative process all along and wanted to continue that.
Excellent. Are there any further questions about that? Okay, moving on then.
We'll need a vote.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept staff recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. 6S3. Has this one been pulled?
Oh, yes, it was.
Okay, then let me read what it actually says. This agenda has been pulled because of the numerous comments received will be taken up at the September policy planning and policy committee meeting. Are there any comments about that?
There were actually quite a few comments given this one. Residency is a very confusing issue, and so the staff has asked that this be considered at the September meeting as well. I guess we need a vote to...
Right. Do I have a motion to move it to September?
So moved.
Okay. Second.
Okay. The motion is to remove this from the agenda for this period and post it on the September. I'm looking at Bill over there, and he's like, yes, no.
Which can be a single motion, correct, Counselor?
Yes,
Thank you.
can be. Okay. I have a first and a second over here. All right. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Great. Okay, agenda item 64S was on the consent calendar. Okay. Agenda item 6T. Item 6T is a report on proposals approved by the Commissioner or Assistant Commissioner since the previous board meeting. This is an informational item. Are there any questions as you look through those? Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman, very messily, that concludes the work on the Committee on Strategic Planning and Policy. And nobody better tell Lynn what happened. It's going to kill me.
Well, since although the agenda calls for lunch, but it's only about 10 till 11,
I'm going to suggest that we continue on and take up Agenda Item 8. Yes, the script says 7, but Agenda Item 8 from the Committee on Closing the Gaps, chaired by Elaine Mendoza. So, Chairman Mendoza, you're still up at bat.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Okay. All right. Matters relating to Committee on Closing the Gaps. 8A is the overview. First and foremost, I'd like to recognize 2 students who join us today from San Houston State University. They are spending a day and a half in the Division of P16 Initiatives learning more about programmatic activities, and I'm hoping giving input and suggestions on things that we can do. Candy Harris and Cameron Marshall, if you two will stand up, let me introduce you appropriately. Candy is a first-year graduate student in public administration. She is also a full-time staff member at Sam Houston State and coordinates a variety of academic outreach programs. Upon graduation next year, Candy will focus her energies toward nonprofit institutions to help them work with minority communities and provide positive personal and educational outcome for students. Candy, your work is at the heart of what we've been talking about all morning. Welcome. Cameron will graduate this coming December as a middle school math teacher. He will begin graduate school in spring 2011 at Sam Houston, pursuing studies in educational administration with the goal of becoming a school administrator. He will ultimately would like to work in low-income districts to have the opportunity to help underprivileged youth stay in school and pursue post-secondary education. Cameron, thank you for your work, and we wish you well, both of you, in the work that you're pursuing. Everybody welcome our 2 students today. Dr. Laredo, y'all are shadowing Dr. Laredo, but I know she's going to learn just as much from you all as you will from her. Board members, you may recall that $1.5 million of the 2008 College Access Challenge grants were used to award grants on a first-come, need-only basis. And to date, 965 awards have been offered, and we are still in the process of making more grants. What's really, really special is that numerous thank you notes have been received from the students who have benefited from these funds. And I think in the Lone Star room later this afternoon, we will have those thank you notes available that we can look at. But talking about some of the decisions we make exactly affecting students' lives and seeing that through those thank you notes is going to be really, really special. So I hope everybody will take advantage and take a look at some of those.
Madam Chairman,
yes.
I have had the opportunity to read these thank you notes, and some of them absolutely will commit you to tears as you read them. And we have some right here, but we have also posted all the others on the wall so that you can read them during your lunch break.
Awesome. Well, we will certainly take a look at that. It'll make lunch much more interesting, believe me. And I understand we have State Representative former Chairman of House Higher Education, Jeannie Morrison, in the audience from Victoria. Where is she? If you would stand, ma'am. There we go. Now we can see you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Agenda item 8B is consideration of staff recommendations to the board relating to the adoption of Closing the Gaps by 2015. It's a progress report, and although this item was on the agenda for Committee on Closing the Gaps in June, we did not take a vote. Therefore, we're moving this forward to the full board for approval. Susan?
Thank you very much. And I'm used to having to hurry, so this will be kind of nice.
So hurry.
Hurry. Okay, I'll still hurry. This report is a little bit different. We've actually had some increases in our career colleges that we haven't had before, and that's because of the Chapter 7 rules that the board adopted last year. So we were getting the full reporting from the career colleges, unlike we've had in the past. Next. The career colleges include, like for the 2-year sector, the ITT technical programs, the DeVry, University of Phoenix, and also Bible college and seminary colleges that are not part of the ITEC schools. So these are new institutions that are reporting to us now because of the Chapter 7 rules. This shows you a little bit of what type of enrollment increases. We've always had the career colleges included, but we use kind of a pseudo number for them because we didn't have a full accounting from the career colleges. So we had a kind of a flat number from iPads. This also shows you that most of those institutions are actually very small. So there's only 17 of those that are over 800 students enrolled. So most of the institutions have very small enrollments. What does this mean for closing the gaps? What we had shown you earlier actually had an increase of 102,000 students, and that was for the publics and the independent colleges. This actually shows that the increase has been 121,000 students. So that is about 19,000 more than what we had estimated for the career colleges. So that's interesting, and it's good to know. That is, we think, a growing sector, but we only have data for 1 year, so we don't really know how much they've grown. That is from a 2000 to 2009 numbers. So as we go forward and collect this information annually, we'll have a better idea of how fast that sector is actually growing. For the bachelor's degrees and for the success target, we really don't have longitudinal data yet. We can say that the career colleges have added to the count. Our targets, though, did not include the career college degrees and certificates because we didn't have any way of knowing what they were at the time. So now that we have those are something that we will consider, but we don't want to compare that to our targets because our targets were not set including those institutions, and we don't want to overly inflate what we have. And so we're going to continue using the same ones, and we'll evaluate it as we get additional data to make sure that what we're doing makes sense. As you can look at this, we've had some increases. And for Chairman Heldenfield's, we actually put the per year increase that will be needed to get us out to the 2015 this time. So as you can look, we need about an increase of about 7,500 per year for bachelor's, associates, and certificate. And this actually goes along very well with what the board has been looking at as far as focusing on success and needing to focus on success, because that is a huge increase, to increase 7,500 per year. Hispanic awards need to increase almost 4,000 per year, and African American awards by about 1,100. As you can see, you've approved a lot of doctoral programs. We only need about 35, an increase of about 35 to reach our 2015 targets. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the items that are in the accelerated action plan that you approved at the last board meeting. This looks at participation rates. We wanted to give you some of the background information on why we selected African American males, because the Closing the Gaps targets are based on having 5.7% of the population enrolled in higher ed. African American females are right now at about 7.8%, whereas the males are only at 5.1%. So we have a difference of almost 3 percentage points between the African American females and males. Obviously, we have the largest issue is with the Hispanic population, and as you can see, even the Hispanic females are higher than Hispanic males. They're still not good. And for whites, the same. Males are just not enrolling in higher ed at the same percentage as the females. So that is something that we're focusing on. In the STEM awards, which is another area of focus, we have good news. They had an increase of 17%, and they did increase since 2009. The bad news is that we need to double the number of STEM awards to reach the target. So that is why they're in the accelerated action plan. Unfortunately, for new teacher certifications, we don't really have any good news. All certification, that's ALT-CERT and through the regular programs, actually dropped in 2009, fiscal year 2009. That's the first time since 2000 that we've had a drop in the number of new certified teachers. And the math and science teachers actually dropped 5%. So that is a considerable drop. And with the recommended high school program going to the 4x4, that is a major concern of how to get more math and science teachers.
Susan? Have we, either empirically or anecdotally, have we studied and learned the reasons behind that drop? Is it due to return, because of the recession, due to return of professionals from the private sector to teaching, or is it due more to school districts squeezing their budgets?
We have heard, and this is all anecdotal, is that we've heard that some of the school districts are really having to cut back so they're not necessarily hiring a lot of additional teachers, maybe increasing class sizes some, that sort of thing, which is another concern. You know, how big are the class sizes going to get? That's not a good thing to do either. So, but the school districts are facing the same type of budget crunch that the state is, and reduced appraisal districts, that sort of thing. So we haven't done a lot of research yet. These numbers just came in from SBEC not too long ago, and they don't do the research necessarily on why the drop. We're starting to look at that and see whether the drop. In the past, the alt-cert programs have really been taking up the slack. The university full programs have not been growing at a very rapid pace, and I don't know why the alt-cert programs are slowing down. So I don't know why that is.
Well, hopefully that's something
we'll be looking
maybe in
at,
partnership
yes,
with TEA or whatever, we can look at it, analyze.
Right.
Because obviously that's a short-term 5-year challenge. The other thing I think is it's important to note that our accelerated plan focuses not just on the number of teacher certifications, but on the effectiveness of the teachers we're putting in the classroom.
Right. And Susan Barnes, I know, is working on some of those programs to provide more effective teachers and to get more into the math and science. Obviously, that's, given these numbers, it's even more important now than it was before.
I personally know of 2 young recent graduates, would-be math and science teachers who have struggled to find employment. So,
well, I think that goes back to the funding issues that the ISDs are having. Just a quick summary. Hispanics, even though they've had the largest increase, they still only have an overall combined participation rate of 4.4%, which is much lower than we need it to be. African American females have the highest rate. We need to pull the African American males up. That's an area of concern. I don't know what's going on with the guys. They're not coming. So, you know, that's one of those things where we need to look at how we can get more males going to college and graduating. STEM degrees, and then obviously one we just talked about, which is the math and science teaching.
Are there any questions for Susan? If you reflect about this data, and again, we talked about our accelerated plan several times through the presentation. The accelerated plan is geared right at these issues, and as you can see, it has to be done that way. So are there any comments or questions? Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8C is the coordinate.
You need to vote on it?
Oh, doggone it. All right, apologize for that. May I have a motion to accept the report? Thank you, Dr. Golden. Second? Very good. Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. That was my fault. Okay. Agenda item 8C is the quarterly update on college readiness initiatives. In this case, we'll highlight the Career and College Readiness Marketing Campaign. Dr. Laredo.
Yes, Madam Chairman. As in the past, we have decided that we would be highlighting each month, or every time we have a committee meeting or a board meeting, a specific item that addresses closing the gap and looking at the quarterly update of the college readiness initiatives. And because of our efforts that are moving so quickly with the Generation Texas marketing campaign, we thought that that would be an important one to bring to your attention at this time. And Andy Kessling is here to make that presentation.
Welcome, Andy.
Thank you for the opportunity to share with the board about the full board about the Generation Texas. Some of the members of this group heard portions of what I said earlier in a committee meeting, and I wanted to have an opportunity to share with the entire board where we started with this project and what it is and where we're going with it, and I'll make my comments brief. In 2008, P16 identified college and career readiness standards is something that needed to be communicated to the state of Texas. And that began a process of developing a request for proposal that led to three major goals. One was the college and career readiness standards. Another was creating a college-going culture in the state of Texas. And the third was directed at low socioeconomic students across Texas whose families were unlikely to be familiar with the higher education system. And the idea with these people were to, these students and parents were to educate them about the process of college admission and the application for financial aid. That is the third major goal of the campaign. We went through a thorough process and a competitive bidding process to identify the right agency for this. We had 9 responses that a team of people, including the coordinating board, TEA, and others, that evaluated those proposals. In the end, the coordinating board decided to choose a company named Milkshake Media. It's an Austin-based full-service agency. And you may not be familiar with the name Milkshake, or some of you at this point may very well be familiar with it. But one of the projects that they did that the general public will recognize is the Live Strong campaign for the Lance Armstrong Foundation. And the idea of communicating a college-going culture and the information necessary across the state of Texas required a different approach. Instead of a traditional media and marketing approach where you develop advertisements and distribute them, you go through a budget very quickly. The $3 million in federal funds that we had for this project over a 2-year period was not going to support that. The agency proposed developing a grassroots effort, and that effort has been going since the springtime. What I would like to do right now is share with the full board and this audience a brief video that covers Generation Texas briefly and gives you a flavor for what it is. And for those members that have seen an earlier version of this version contains some new material. So let's show the video.
There's no voice.
We had sound earlier. We've talked about the benefits of technology throughout the morning. There are some times when technology is a challenge.
We need to call Andy and Sean back.
I tell you what, while we address the issue with the video and get this to where you can hear it, let me share briefly with you about the near future plans for Generation.
The access movement.
There we go.
Reboot from there we go.
Texas is the fastest growing state in the nation. Over half of Texas students come from homes with low incomes, and low-income students are less likely to pursue education beyond high school.
You always
always fall back to what you know. And naturally, if you don't know that there is higher education and that there's better opportunities for you, and all you see is what's going on in your neighborhood, you're going to fall back to that.
It's not that people don't want to go to college, they're like scared, or they don't know how to, go about going to college, and they don't know the steps to go to college.
People are just searching for like so many ways, and there's not really one place where somebody can go and just get all the answers. They have to like call like multiple agencies, and it's too complicated after that.
I think the resources are not missing. The resources are there. It's just the access maybe to them, or not maybe so much the access, but the exposure.
It seems like sometimes everybody's doing their own thing without all of us getting on the same page and working together towards a common goal.
Here in Texas, our goal is to ensure they're college and career ready when they finish high school. So they're ready to do the work on day one, whether that's on the job or in a college classroom. That education means a better job for them and a whole lot stronger workforce for Texas.
Texas has got to compete. We've got to compete with other states. We've got to compete with other countries.
We have a lot of families in Texas that don't fully realize how the job market is changing. They're not aware that a lot of manufacturing jobs have disappeared, have gone offshore. They don't realize that the American economy is going to be information-based and high-tech-based, and that requires higher levels of education.
You know, most parents are stressed out. You know, how I'm going to take care of my kid with this, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do that. You know, because we don't have the money. The money got to go to the bills. The money got to go this. There's no money left over for this. And, you know, if you don't know where to look for the scholarships and things, then you're basically kind of stuck.
I recall sitting down with my parents to fill out the financial aid forms. It's the first time in my entire life I had asked my father, how much do you make? That's a very personal question, especially in the Hispanic community. You don't talk about how much you make. You don't ask someone else how much they make. So to all of a sudden turn to my dad and ask him, how much do you make? And I'm going to write this down and send it to somebody so they can take a look at it. That was a very long night at my house. There's many people out there that do struggle, and I do hear about, you know, they're like, well, what do we do? I mean, I don't know what to do, and my parents don't know what to do either. Like, who do I ask?
Part of the problem is too much information, and it's coming to them from all directions, and they need to be able to hone in on one source that absolutely solidifies and brings everything together.
Welcome to Generation Texas. Generation Texas is a grassroots, community-based movement. It's united in the belief that every student, regardless of circumstances, belongs on the path to college or career education.
When I hear the word Generation Texas, I guess it means that we want to move as a whole, you know, one generation moving up and trying to, you know, pursue higher education. It's like a light bulb just lights up. People's faces shine, they smile. So there's got to be something within those few letters that really excites a person when they hear it.
It kind of makes me feel like I'm part of it, like the generation of Texas, you know, like, because I'm a first gen, like, to start going to college, like, with my brother, and then Texas, I mean, it's Texas.
I feel that I already am a part of it, really.
Well, there's a lot of campaigns out there that say, you know, go to college, do this, do that. But with Generation Texas, it's like, you know, it's showing you examples. You know, it's telling you the why and the how. You know, why to go to college and how you can do it.
I think that the biggest message it delivers is it tells young people, you are the future of this state.
Now we're talking about an entire generation. We want this generation to be the greatest generation that Texas has ever produced.
I never had the opportunity of the resources that these kids have in this country. And I always tell people, there's no reason why your kids don't pursue a higher education, because regardless of your status, you will be able to get and accomplish whatever you want.
I think the most exciting things about Generation Texas is that it's not approaching people from just one avenue. It's going to be based in the community. It's going to be on the web. It's going to provide a lot of resources in different ways.
Business needs to lead the way. Corporations and their foundations need
to create a college-going culture. They need to find out about this program that's being offered to them. And then they need to take it, and they need to work with their local high schools to see that it's fully implemented.
One of the most important variables on whether a young person, a first-generation student, goes to college is a person in their life of authority, a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, a coach, who says, I believe in you, and I know you can go to college, and I'm going to show you how to do it.
That's what Texans do. We rise to the challenge, and the challenge of our time is, are we going to be college-ready and career-ready? And right now, we're a little bit behind. We're doing better, but we're not doing better fast enough. And so we need to rise to the challenge, and Generation Texas is all about rising to this challenge.
That's what Generation Texas is all about. Putting more of our students on the path to success in school, work, and life. And depend solely on a community's commitment. Do your part. Join Generation Texas today.
Join Generation Texas by believing in this movement and the potential of these kids.
We are Generation Texas.
I am Generation Texas. I support Generation Texas.
I support Generation Texas.
We are Generation Texas.
I am Generation Texas.
I support Generation Texas.
I support Generation Texas.
I am Generation Texas.
I am Generation Texas.
I support Generation Texas, and you should do too.
Generation Texas is slated to roll out in the 4 major metropolitan areas in the state according to the original proposal. We have identified 2 markets where we will be going, San Antonio and Fort Worth, this fall. Launch activities are being planned. Relationships have been built within the communities, and we are going forth in a strong fashion. With the addition of another grant that was approved earlier this year and has been distributed, there will be 12 other communities that will be joining us in the fall as well. Across the state of Texas. That includes every place from north central Texas to the Gulf Coast, from Lubbock to Nacogdoches. And our intent in year 2 of this campaign, year 1 has basically been focused on preparation and aligning the brand and preparing the materials and making those contacts in those communities. As I said, this is a grassroots effort. This is based on reaching out to parents, to students, to educators, providing educators with resources that they may not have, to create a college-going culture in the state of Texas for a whole new generation of Texas students. This is something that very much supports closing the gaps in the effort to engage more students to participate in education beyond high school. We talk about college. Make no mistake that this is about associate's degrees and certificate programs. It encompasses all of higher education in Texas and what is appropriate for the student at a given time. The college and career readiness standards, we're looking forward to that, producing a better prepared student that is ready for the first year of college or whatever choice it may be. One other thing that I was talking about as far as grassroots approach is concerned is before the meeting, one of the Board of Trustee members that was recognized, I was having a brief conversation with her, and she said, I heard about this from a friend, and that is, I said, that's very much in the spirit of Generation Texas. It is to reach out to the entire community and involve the entire community in a shared effort with shared responsibilities for moving forth this next generation of Texas students. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any questions or comments? Again, we had a lot of robust discussion at our committee level and a lot of excitement building around this campaign. Are there any other comments or questions?
Andy, I just want to thank you for your work and representing the agency and working with Milkshake and keeping us driving forward. It is one of the most exciting things we're doing, and it may be the most exciting thing we're doing. Every time I see those students, I just, I remember why we're all here.
I'm honored to be a part of it, and I'm pleased that this board had the vision to engage in something that is different, but it is tailored for communities across Texas. You saw the colorfulness of the brand in here, and it is meant to be something that each community can identify with and leverage the resources in those communities that may exist around college and career readiness, and create an umbrella where students will find their way onto the path where they will believe in the effort of college and preparing for education beyond high school, and join this movement and act to fill out FAFSA forms, be more engaged there, and know how the process works to get into college and to succeed.
Great stuff.
There was one, I think this, I agree with Fred, this is one of the most exciting things that I've seen this agency undertake since I've been on this board, the short period of time I've been here. There's just one comment that was made in that presentation that I really homed in on, and it was the one where the individual or the young man, the man said, there has to be someone in each one of those students' lives, whether it be their father or their grandparent or their teacher or their coach, that says, I believe in you. I believe that you can go to college. And I really hope that we can use this as a tool to not only educate students in how to plug into the system, but also to help educate those of us who've been through the system and are in positions to be that one individual in that individual student's life, irregardless of whether we're a father or a grandparent or a coach or a teacher or even a coordinating board member, and saying to those two students that we come in contact and realizing that we can be one-on-one major impact on individual students' willingness and believing in themselves that they can be successful. And so I hope that we take this as a dual approach to this, not only to educate the importance to the students, but also to impress upon the importance of us and as adults and leaders in our communities, leaders in our schools, leaders in our state, to really one by one reach out and the importance of the impact that can have in getting these kids into the college environment. And I think that's part of what you're trying to do is stress that importance.
Exactly right.
Little as it may seem, but it can have a tremendous impact, especially when enough of us really realize that importance and start doing it one-on-one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Golden. Right on target. Thank you, Andy. Really appreciate all your work.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to say that Shannon Ratliff is in the audience with us today from Milkshake Media, who has traveled across the state already quite a few times with this effort. In fact, I think he and I will be traveling to Lubbock the first on Friday, the 6th, to be with them because they wanted to roll it out in their community. So.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8D and agenda item 8E have been moved to the consent calendar. That takes us to agenda item 8F, which is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to expend funds awarded to the coordinating board under the 2010-2011 College Access Challenge Grant. Now, this is we're going to be looking at this in two ways. We're going to look at it first at the expenditure of the funds, and then second, releasing RFPs for the completion of some of this work. So, Judy, if you will walk us through this, make sure we have this outlined very clearly, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Board members, I spent a considerable amount of time, and I'm going to apologize for the length of your blue pages, but I just felt that because of the complexity of the grant, that in order for you to be prepared for today's meeting, I needed to explain not only what the grant was about, the goals that it would allow to be funded, and why we selected what we did in terms of that funding. This item was not on the committee agenda in June because at that time the agency had not been designated by the governor's office as the lead agency for the utilizations of these funds that come to us from the federal government. After our meeting, we did receive the letter of approval from the governor's office. We then sat down as a team and looked at the guidelines as stated. If we can go to the next slide. And what we have done is looked at not only the access part of the grant, but also the success part. So the purpose was to significantly increase the number of underrepresented students who enter and remain in post-secondary education. The allowable activities that were allowed under this grant was number one, information and outreach to underrepresented students and families. It was also to provide, could also be used to provide professional development for elementary, secondary, and financial aid counselors, and it also could be, the funds could be used for need-based financial aid. This is a budget of $11,845,689. A one-year grant with the potential of 5 years of funding, but we must reapply at the end of the first year. In addition to the money that we receive, we must also are required to provide a match of $6 million that can come from private and state funds. So in your packet, I also provided for you the full detailed budget in addition to the amount of match money that we have identified that would allow us to reach that $6 million. Next slide, please. Adding to success to the THECB activities, in the alignment with the recently adopted Accelerated Action Plan, we looked at the closing the gaps by 2015 and recommended for 2010 to include success activities based on enabling legislation that includes the language allowable in outreach and services to students at risk of not completing college. Please also note that we have been in extensive dialogue with the federal government officer in charge of this grant to ensure that our success activities were in line and acceptable in terms of expenditures. Next slide, please. What we tried to do, and I'm not going to take credit for this cute slide because I have to give credit to Nina Wright, who was a major player in helping me put this grant together, but it was a way to be able to show to you how we have scaled our work in terms of the College Access Grant. And so if you will look at from the bottom up, everything we are doing is built around the Generation Texas campaign in delivering the message of not only how to access college, but how to be successful in staying in college. And so the levels or the buckets that you see listed on those stairs are also referenced as the major area of work within this grant. Next slide, please. And if you'll see where we talk about information and awareness, where we talk about the intensive outreach strategies, where we look at the online work in order to have information for how to access and apply to college, if we look at student services that also then support activities that help at-risk students be successful in staying in college, and then lastly, and certainly not least, the need-based component of our work. What we have done is tried to address, based on closing the gap and the critical shortage in the STEM fields, is looking, and we've done research. We know that there are 8,000 students currently in the pipeline from the 60-hour and above level trying to complete degrees in science, math, and technology. And so looking at our need-based efforts, we have identified funds in order to help those students, need-based, complete those degrees so we can increase that number where you've heard a minute ago from Susan Brown that we've made an increase, but we're certainly not there. Next slide, please. The proposed budget is laid out, and on your blue page, I have listed each of the amounts of funds, beginning with Generation Texas for $2 million, our web portal enhancement work at $820,000, the College Advising Corps, $1.5 million, comprehensive student services that includes not only AVID, but a data-driven student services program, totaling $1,420,000. Our comprehensive adult completion program of $500,000, and web-based professional development for counselors at $500,000, and our need-based student grant aid is $4 million. Again, keep in mind that this is 1 year of work. And so what we did in selecting those items is to be able to lay that foundation for work that we can truthfully by the end of next August be able to see some movement, but at the same time also be able to build that work as we move into those future years. Next slide, please. The Generation Texas campaign is set at $2 million. It will focus on rolling out in the communities as you see listed on the side. It will also be seeking additional match funds coming from the College for All Texans Foundation. Next slide, please. The web portal, we have been working on the web portal College for All Texans over the last 2 years in a manner that would allow the agency to continue this effort without having to look for funds to sustain that web portal in a manner that would be not cost effective to the agency. We have added, or in the process of adding information links related to military, to transfer, to adult basic education. We also are going to be seeking an RFP to identify an individual or company for developing a financial aid literacy tool that can be placed in the web portal, creating applications for selecting an existing tools related to the financial aid calculator, which we have already finished but are still in the process of populating, and that will also be accessible to students. And then the possible retooling of the application for applying for Texas for integration into the other sites. The next component of work will be our online counselor training, which is a subgrant to the Texas Education Agency, who has developed through Project Share an online training program. We want to be able to apply and provide this for counselors across the state, in addition to the work we've already done this past year with already over 2,000 counselors who have gone through training. The next area of work is defined is the National College Advising Corps. If you recall at your last meeting, you did approve the first core of those advisors. You met them at our committee meeting. They will be placed in the Houston Independent School District, working in the targeted high schools for creating that college-going culture. This then will be the expansion to take 120 more of those advisors across the state in schools that are showing that lower college-going culture to help move that mobility. The next item is the returning student program. I think you heard mentioned earlier also by students and even referenced by the president from El Paso Community College, the number of adults that are out there who have beyond that 60-hour mark that we really need to target to help get back into school, and there is a component in this grant to be able to do that. There is also a web portal element in this program that will help do degree audits for those students who are trying to complete their degrees because they're already at that halfway mark. The next item is the comprehensive student services. You know that as part of our efforts, we have a pilot program in place with AVID going post-secondary. There are 8 of those campuses already approved. This is the expansion to raise us to 11 currently are participating, but to increase that number so that we can cover more institutions in the state. The next part of the program if you'll go to the next slide, will be a competitive grant for a student success audit program. We will be putting an RFP out to identify 7 or 8 institutions to help us looking at that concept and to implement it within their respective campuses. Next item, and that is a need-based grant aid, and I've already mentioned that one of the critical shortages as identified in our accelerated action plan is the need to identify more individuals in the area of math, science, and technology. We have identified that number as 8,000 in the pipeline with more than 60 hours of college. It will be a need-based, first-come, first-served basis grant as we have done in the past. Instead of putting it out for an external agency to be doing the legwork in terms of these grants, we have been working, and thanks to Dan Weaver and his team and Casey Kennedy, there will be an online process developed here where those applications can be submitted directly to us. We will then be issuing the checks to the institutions as those awards are made. So if you take back and you look at your blue pages, that defines the scope of work within the next 12 months. We should probably be hearing from the federal government on or about August 13th. That would mean the grant would conclude the following August of 2011. We will then be preparing another application for the following year to be submitted, but at the same time be showing to you what outcomes we have achieved in this year of work. In your blue pages, I have also then defined, this is the breakdown of the budget as you see, not only access, but all the way to the success and completion factor. Next slide. The anticipated outcomes of what we hope to achieve, not only with success, not only with access, but success with our 1 year of work. That concludes my comment.
Okay, as Dr. Laredo opened up with, this is complex. As you can see, it is complex. By looking at that one graphic on slide 4, I think the board can take a look at how they built up, how Judy and his team built up a program of work and making sure that it was consistent with what we're trying to achieve and closing the gaps and, quite frankly, in the accelerated plan with the outcome of success. So, board members, do you have any questions at this point? Please, Rick.
Miss Judy, the match of $6 million, walk me through that. We have to provide matching funds within this next year to be eligible for consideration for the next round.
Yes, sir. And what we have done is we looked at what funds we have within the agency that are available and are eligible match. For example, the work study funds are eligible match. We are connecting them also with our Avid work. Work money that Avid has put into the budget for the program is also eligible as a match. The money that we have in our general revenue looking within HB1, looking at the programs that connect to the type of work in the College Access Grant where that money has not been tapped as a match, we are utilizing that money as a match. And then looking at the College for All Texans Foundation, that we are also looking for money as an eligible match. Outside money as well, TEA is providing a match.
What's the missing link? What have we not identified?
We've identified it all. It's fully identified in your budget that is in the blue page so that you can see exactly where that money is matched. It's on the white pages where it says CACG budget narrative.
I want to ask you, how much is there money over and above, for instance, for College for All Texans?
Yes, there is.
That the foundation does not have in hand today that they will have to go out and solicit between now and August?
Yes, there is money above that. There's a contingency plan.
I'd just ask you, if you could, to be sure and communicate that to Bob Shepard, because College for All Texans will be meeting September 8th, I think, right? And this is one of the things we really need to get up front with them to make them understand the role we need, that foundation to play in this.
And that discussion Nina and I have had, and Nina is going to have it on the agenda for that board meeting because she knew that it was coming up, so that they are aware of what is in this. And this will also be presented at that time to them.
Okay. And are we to assume that if we're eligible again next year that dollar amounts will be comparable in the $11, $12 million range?
Yes, sir. As the grant, the amount of money for this year would be the amount of money for the next year, and subsequent years the match would be the same.
So it would be roughly a 12-6.
Yes, sir.
1-2 match going forward. And is that you mentioned it's a potential for 5 years, but is it re-earned annually?
Yes.
Each year you reapply.
Each year you reapply. Now, there is dialogue in process among the directors of College Access Challenge Grants with the federal government to try and minimize this reapplying every year. This is a very detailed grant to be working with and developing, and it took us no less than 30 days daily working on this, putting it together. So we will be not only preparing it to submit it by next July 2nd, we will also be wrapping up a grant that doesn't end until August 13th while another one is coming in. So it's a continual process that we will be monitoring very closely. There's staff identified that will be working with each of these efforts in order to move this grant forward so that we continue to be successful. We were very fortunate 2 years ago to be awarded the grant by the governor's office. A report, extensive report, was submitted to him about 60 days ago, outlining the work that we have done in the past 2 years, where we are, what our completion is, and what success we've had.
Thank you. Chairman, the web portal part of the budget, the $820,000, will that, do you feel like that investment will get us to what we've talked about for a long time now, creating that one-stop shop for college access and funding?
It definitely will for us here. The next step, and Andy and his team and Casey Kennedy and Matt Oram have been working very extensively with Rider 51, which came out of the Lieutenant Governor's office, that connected our agency with TEA in the past year, and looking at all of the websites that are out there and trying to see how we can come together as a team with one website. So what we have done with ours is to round ours off so that then as we move forth and over time, hopefully the state will be looking at one major web portal, but our work can come together because no work is for naught. There's benefits in each of the websites that are currently out there. It's how do we just bring them all together so there's one location to go to. And now, as the student referenced in the slide, there's so much information you just don't know where to access it. So that's what we're trying to do.
As one of the, she may have been a teacher or a parent, but she said the students need to hone in on a single focus on how they do this.
And that is what we are working towards. But most importantly, we've been working very hard here in the agency with the team that has been meeting every Monday at 3 o'clock for the last 2 years just about, to make sure that what we have done here will not be a burden in cost to this agency to maintain. It would be maintained by the internal workings of what we do every day.
And then the web portal, if all those different sites are brought together into a single access point, that would then be incorporated, I assume, in the Gen Tech's campaign.
Yes, that's what we're working towards.
You're going to be branded that way. Excellent. And a related question I had was the academic advisors that we're going to add 120 across the state, or is that all in San Antonio?
No.
Across the state.
I tried. No. She tried, but no, it's not. No.
Will that also be coordinated with Gen Tech's?
Yes.
Those advisors?
In fact, they're being trained in the Gen Tech's program just as well. Matt has been traveling with them. In fact, I think the commissioner saw them.
I ran into him in Washington, of all places.
And he was quite surprised because they had on Generation Texas T-shirts. And the commissioner doesn't have one of those T-shirts, but then neither do any of us here.
Yeah, might I add, neither does the board.
That's the board. So, Shannon, we need to get those to the board members.
I wear a size large, by the way. And last but not least, well, actually, two questions. The comprehensive student services requiring that student success audit by applicants. Will that RFP request or anticipate the kind of employer outcome metrics that past Chairman Ryder referred to earlier when we were talking about the cost efficiency recommendation?
Yes, it will. And let me also say to you that we have already sent out a letter. We cleared this with legal counsel because there is some work up front that institutions are going to have to do in order to get this data, the basis for the RFP in place in order to even apply, so that the outcomes will be achieved. And in relationship to what Mr. Ryder had stated before, yes, it is included. And so that we wouldn't be putting institutions at a disadvantage in applying, we sought permission to let them know this RFP may be coming out should the board approve it, and if they wanted to apply in order to be able to move to that success-driven mode, then this is what would need to be in place. So we gave them a month's notice to be able to do their legwork so they could then apply and show that in the grant. It's in the application itself when their application comes in.
That's great news. Thank you, Judy. The last thing I was going to ask about on the need-based grant aid, it's very encouraging that we've got 8,000 potential STEM graduates in the pipeline. That's two-thirds of the increase we need. We need to double from 12,000 to 24,000 ag graduates. But the grant money will only spread to 1,000 of those.
But remember, you have 4 more years.
Well, so that's part of my question. If there's 8,000 in the pipeline, is that grant money coming to them? How's the selection process work? Do they get it as a senior or within 30 hours?
It's first, as long as you're above that 60-hour threshold, then you once we announce the application, it being available, then you would apply, and it's first come, first served. So
but
based
reapply
on
the next year?
That's right. They could reapply for the following year.
Anything else, Frank? Thank you for this great question. Anything else? Frank?
No.
Okay.
It's not done.
Had to do? Okay. Any other questions, board members? Okay. Judy, wonderful job in outlining all this. And so if the board will indulge us, we're going to ask for 2 motions. One that will speak to the expenditure of funds, and then the second will speak to the RFP release. Okay? Everything go kosher with everybody? Very good. Okay, may I have a motion to expend the funds under the new 2010-2011 College Access Challenge Grant in the amount of $11,845,689, addressing the following scope of work. Number 1 is the Gentex campaign at $2 million. This is all outlined on the slides as well as in the narrative on the blue pages. The web portal enhancement at $820,000. College Advising Corps at $1.5 million. Comprehensive Student Services, one of Avid at $220,000, and then a data-drive student success program at $1.2 million. Number 5 would be an adult completion program at $500,000. Number 6 would be web-based professional development of counselors at $500,000. And number 7, need-based student grant aid at $4 million. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Whit, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any further comments or clarifications needed at this point? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now, may I have a motion to accept the recommendation to issue a request for proposal for awarding of the funds under the 2010-2011 College Access Challenge Grant for the following. Number 1, the web-based financial literacy training program at $195,000. And then number 2, identification and selection of 6 to 8 consortium schools for the first-year pilot of the online mapping system for adult completion program at $500,000. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Golden. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Durga. Any further comments or questions about the RFPs? Hearing none, may I have all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Great. I would like to make sure that we end this agenda item by clarifying that we do not have to issue a request for proposal for the $2 million Gentex marketing campaign, because legal counsel has advised us that since the $2 million award for the Gentex marketing campaign under the new College Access Challenge Grant falls within the same fiscal year, 2010-2011, of the original award to Milkshake Media, who is rolling out the Gentex campaign, there will be no need for a new request for proposal for the continuation of this phase of work at this time. If subsequent funds are utilized in the future fiscal years, a request for proposal will be submitted for approval at that time. Okay? Is everybody comfortable with that? All right. Mr. Chairman, that concludes these items for presentation and discussion by committee on closing the gaps.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Mendoza. At this point, I think we'll go back to agenda item 7, which is lunch. So we will adjourn and reconvene at 12:30 sharp to conclude the meeting.
Thank you.
And before we take up agenda item 9, we did have staff bring to us one last action item, a motion that we need for closing the gaps.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item 8F, as you guys recall, we did it in 2 motions. Motion number 2 was to issue RFPs, and one of our RFPs was not included on that. So if I may have a motion to approve an RFP for the Data Drive Student Success Program institutions. Institutions will compete for the grants to support an early alert system to boost student success. And if you guys will recall, it's part of the work that we approved in Motion 1 under the CAG. So if I may have a motion, I'd greatly appreciate it. It's the RFP part.
So moved.
Dr. Golden, thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you, Durga. And again, just one of the RFPs that was left off the second motion. So any further comments or questions? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for that.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Mendoza. Appreciate it. We're now on agenda item 9, matters relating to the Committee on Agency Operations. For purposes of yesterday's AOC meeting and this section of our board meeting, Whit Ryder has graciously agreed to temporarily serve as chair of Agency Ops. At our future AOC meetings, Board Member Wallace Hall will serve as the chair of this committee. Whit?
Good afternoon. Just to give a little brief summary, first of all, I'll say we met yesterday afternoon for about 2 or 3 hours, so if we go through these items real quick for the remaining 4 of you in the audience, I know you won't be disappointed, but we did spend 3 hours yesterday talking about them. A couple of things that we won't spend a lot of time on today is that we had a report from the Deputy Commissioner yesterday, and we received a quarterly financial report as of June 30th, which we reviewed. We got an update on the ARA program and also a report on loan collections and the financial report of loan programs. I'm pleased to announce that Susan Warren from KPMG met with us yesterday, and Dennis, you weren't there for this, but we got an unqualified opinion, and as we'll see, we'll approve that today. And also we had no management letter. That's the first time in many years, and so it was an excellent report, and there were no weaknesses or significant deficiencies noted. As I said, none of these reports, I think, require full action by the board, but I wanted to make you aware of that. The first agenda item we'll formally cover today is agenda item 9B. That's consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board for a resolution relating to the issuance of the state of Texas college student loan bonds in one or more series, and also delegating to the commissioner the authority for the filing of one or more applications to obtain a portion of the state's allocation for private activity bonds. The committee voted favorably on this resolution. Again, that's outlined under agenda item 9B, and be happy to have Arturo or anybody answer any questions if you have about it, but if there's not any questions, I'd entertain a motion approving the committee's recommendation.
Move to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I just want to also point out that in your places you have the supplemental yellow page, which is a copy of the resolution itself. It was just inadvertently left out of your book, but this is what you voted on yesterday.
And this is basically for another $125 million, if I remember right.
That's right.
That motion still stands.
Okay, motion by Ms. Mendoza. Could I have a second? Second by Dr. Golden. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. Motion carries. Agenda item 9C is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation regarding the coordinating board's operating budget for fiscal year 2011. Again, we approved that in detail. Dr. Arturo outlined the changes. The 5% cut, which we were asked to make, the majority of that is being absorbed in the 2011 budget. Each of y'all was sent that under a separate cover, and Arturo will be happy to answer any questions anybody might have. If I hear none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the 2011 budget as so presented and as recommended by the committee. Can I have such a motion? Move to approve. Okay, Mr. Hildenfeld, second. Durga, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by the same sign. Thank you. Agenda item 9D is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board regarding the coordinating board's legislative appropriations request. And I'd like to, is Dan Weaver here? Dan. And again, we spent probably the majority of our time yesterday talking about the LAR, and Dennis, what I've asked Dan to do just to make sure is that as opposed to going through the LAR line by line, which we absolutely can, what I've asked him to do is to give us a real snapshot on how we set our baseline for financial aid for this upcoming biennium, which is then driving off our cuts, because that's our biggest line item. And then we'll be happy to address any other questions on those recommended cuts that we put in the budget. Dan?
Let me just ask, do we have the same handouts that were available at yesterday's committee meeting?
We should.
You mean the updated, the revised LAR recommendations?
They haven't changed since the meeting yesterday?
Well, we have some members who weren't here yesterday.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. I know that Dr. Alonzo will chime in as needed to keep me on task. I specifically want to talk about the financial aid baseline. Because of the 5% reductions that we realized in the current biennium, the way we got to that 5% in financial aid didn't require a full 5% GR reduction in financial aid. So as you're trying to compare 10-11 baseline with 12-13 baseline, you can't take a 5% calculation and get to that next number. It's actually much less than that. As we put forward our budget reduction for 10-11, the GR portion was less than 3% on GR. And GR dedicated, which is primarily from beyond time set-asides, was substantially higher than that. As the leadership downtown considered our 10-11 reduction, they were gracious enough not to impose those cuts directly onto our 10-11 our FY11 operating budget, but we did have to go back in the 12-13 baseline and incorporate those reductions that we put forward. So the GR reduction, which is less than 3%, was applied to the 12-13 base, and that the net effect of that is about $22.5 million of general revenue that we had to take out of the 12-13 base for financial aid. We have, during our 10-11, and I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, so let me know if I'm off at all. The 10-11 reductions that the board approved did not delineate the specific program where the reductions were to be made. They just gave a broad stroke of $22.5 million of financial aid. And on a practical matter, we carried forward that broad $22.5 million reduction into 12 and 13 that wasn't specific to a particular program. So as we were crafting the 12-13 baseline and using the commissioner's guidance on protecting programs for the neediest students, as we worked through the 5 programs that are in the financial aid strategy, Texas Grant, TEOG, TEG, Beyond Time and Work Study, ultimately the programs that target the neediest students rose to the top of the programs we wanted to protect. And that ultimately meant that the Beyond Time program went to the bottom of the list. So on our 12-13 baseline request that we put forward, the bulk of our reductions in the financial aid strategy in the baseline is coming from general revenue Beyond Time monies. As we looked at the reductions that come after the baseline, then the strategy is essentially the same of trying to minimize impacts to the neediest students and still preserve the integrity of each particular program. So as the 5% reductions were laid out, it's not an across-the-board 5% on every program until the second 5% where we've kind of extracted all of the possible benefits for each particular program in the first 5%. The second 5% is much more of a proportional cut between Texas Grant, TEG, and TEOG. And that's a it doesn't sound very high level, but the budget reductions this year were particularly difficult because there was kind of you don't have to take it, but we had to ultimately realize those in our LAR for 12 and 13. So there was a little bit of play going on between what we actually had to realize this year versus our planning for 12 and 13.
Dennis, I'm doing most of this. Now, I want to make sure you feel comfortable. Everybody else was at the committee yesterday, but it's important, and I want to make sure that we answer any questions that you might have since the first time for you to say it.
I appreciate that. I'm okay with it.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's worthy of note for Dennis's consideration as well as perhaps if Dr. Alonso could outline the process they went through in order to come up with all the details that Dan just presented with us for us, because there's a lot of work that went into getting to where we are. Dr. Alonso?
Yes. And I must also say that I had called Dennis on Tuesday, and we went through some of this. I mean, so I won't do it, but yes, when the instructions came out from the LBB, from the leadership, the commissioner gave us the guiding principles of making sure that we went through a thoughtful and deliberative process of identifying the recommendations for the cuts. The easy thing would have been for us to come in with a across the board, but we were instructed that we were not to do that. And so we went through several iterations with the division heads, with the assistant commissioners, reviewed by Linda, David, and myself, and then we took the recommendations to the commissioner, who gave us more changes, more suggestions. We also engaged the legislative staff members and some legislators themselves and received feedback from them. So the document that was approved by the AOC yesterday is a document that bottom line was, as you said, Mendoza, a lot of work, a lot of thought that went into it, and so it was not easy, and I'm sure that we're not the only state agency that's going. I know that we're not the only state agency, but I'm sure that we're not the only ones that had difficulty with the process, because at the end of the day, all the programs are important, but got to get to the target, and so that's what got us here.
Thank you, Dr. Alonzo. Any other questions? Yes, anything? Feel free.
Thank you.
If not, could I have a motion approving, adopting the coordinating board's legislative appropriations request?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One other thing, as a matter of disclosure, yesterday after the committee had taken the vote, there was a letter that was addressed to the commissioner from the Texas Hospital Association. That letter, a copy of that letter was placed at your places this morning, and it is a letter where they are asking for consideration of their program. They have valid points, but unfortunately, I'm sure that there will be other letters that the commissioner will be getting, and probably even some of you. And so I just wanted to point that out.
And I think Arturo and I had a chance to talk about this for committee members who are new to the board. And I think these numbers are right. I think last session there was an additional $20 million appropriated, if I remember right, for the professional nursing shortage program.
An additional $35 million.
$35 million. And I know that $5 million of that was a carve-out and a one-time carve-out.
For UT Arlington.
For UT Arlington. But that was a substantial increase. And so I think in our baseline, I think we're recommending about a $2.4 million decrease. And that's not to say at all that we don't still recognize that as a high need area for the state at all. It's just an issue of, obviously, as Dr. Arturo said, trying to look across the board. And but I look at that and still, I think as evidenced by what was done last biennium and only cutting it $2 million, there's still a huge commitment to that area of nursing in the state of Texas.
And frankly, having read the letter, I would not change my recommendation to it.
Any questions on that? Thoughts? Okay. In light of that, could I have a motion to adopt the LAR for the board for the 2012-2013 biennium? Mr. Hinton?
Second.
Second by Ms. Mendoza. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. Motion carries. I'd like to say thanks to the staff. You guys have done a great job. Thanks to Linda. Dom and Arturo. I know the hours you spent down there at the Capitol. I think what's been uniquely done this round of the session has been really a lot of communication of making sure that people in the legislative staffs understand not only the cuts we're recommending, but why we're making those recommendations. So that is a huge amount of progress we've had over the last time we had to go through this back when it was 3 sessions ago. I can't remember. I had to do this ago. So thanks to each of you. So the next agenda item was agenda item 9E. We postponed that in light of the fact that the comment period only ended Monday, and there was additional comments the staff got in that we want to evaluate that. So I'd like to have a motion to postpone agenda item 9E until we can give staff time to evaluate those comments.
Move to postpone.
Okay, Ms. Mendoza, second. Mr. Hinton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. Motion carries. Agenda item 9F, 1, 2, 3, and 4 were acted on by the committee yesterday, and they do not require any further action by the board. They're in your book for information purposes. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Committee on Agency Ops.
Thank you, Chairman Ryder. And this also concludes our meeting. Agenda item 10 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion from Dr. Golden and a second from Mr. Hinton. All in favor say aye and stand up. Aye. Anybody opposed? It's too late.